It's been a while. Welcome back to the United Nations of Horror. I'm Jason, and I am here with the true doctor and master of horror himself, Mark Kane. Mark, how you doing, man?
Hey. Not bad. I have been locked in a room watching horror films since... I know it's been a while since we last put something out, but I have been watching a lot of horror films for this recording, because we're reviewing... almost, not quite every, but almost every horror or horror-adjacent film from 2022.
Indeed. That is a lot of film.
Yeah, and you've watched a few. But I've watched a lot. 52 is my count of 52.
52 films.
52. Now, I will say some of them are horror-adjacent or more thrillers. And if I'd have known that before, I wouldn't have watched them because I was trying to focus on horror. But as I've watched them, I'm going to talk about them, which means there's quite a lot of thrillers not mentioned. There's definitely at least one horror film I didn't watch, I know about, because it's got exactly the same title as another one. There was two horror films with the same title released in 2022. Bizarre. And the reviews of the other one were horrible. And honestly, I'd got so many under my belt and I'd still had several more to watch. It was like, I can't face watching two at the same time. I just can't do it. Yeah. So there is one exclusion, which when we get to the film in question, I will mention. But there is one exclusion. But there's also a few which were kind of sketchy. It was like some sources they say 21, some places they say 22. I've tried to do my best, but depending on where they were released, or if you count festivals, I don't know. So there are a few. We did get some feedback about this, and there are a few films mentioned in the feedback I didn't watch, because if you look on IMDb, they're 2021.
Yeah.
So I didn't get to those. However, I have really focused on 2022 and what that was all about. And to that end, we've kind of arranged them alphabetically, because we went for a few hoops, didn't we? Did we discuss? It was like, how should we do this by category or similarity? It's like, it's easy just to do it alphabetically and just mention, oh, this one's like this one as we go through. So we're actually we're doing an A to Z of 20. I think we could call the title of this episode A to Z of 2022. Horror films, yes.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. There you go. We have the title. But yeah, this is going to be awesome, man. And Mark, thank you for watching all these. I've tried to watch some, but man, life has been busy. So I'd like to apologize to the audience just for just for not having shows for a little bit. It's we're not pod fading. That's guaranteed.
No.
We're not going anywhere.
Yeah, we had basically. I was but Jason won't let me take the blame for this, but I'll take the blame for this. I insisted on what. Firstly, I thought there was going to be like 10. Right? And I thought, I'll just look at top 10s. But then when I started looking at top 10s, they're all radically different. And honestly, the OCD kicked in, and, had too much Pepsi Max, too much caffeine, and then it went on from there, right? So, but 52 films is a lot to watch. I remember doing the same for our Dracula podcast. I think I watched 70 Dracula movies.
Yeah, I thought I watched a lot of Dracula for that, but... it's crazy because you managed to find more Dracula films than I even knew about.
I'm trying. Hold on. I've got to think about. Yes, I'm going to actually do this. There is a Dracula film in this list.
Oh, nice.
Believe it or not. And I did not know that going in, and it was the last one I watched.
Oh,
so
nice.
It was like, whoa, it's a Dracula film. So there we go. All right, then, but we'll get to that when we get to it.
Indeed.
Yes, there is a Dracula film. Probably most people will have no idea came out in 2022. So there you go.
Here we go. All right. Before we get started, really quickly, just want to tell the audience, we're just going to be changing our rating scale permanently, just from basically one. We've been doing like 1 to 10 as far as ratings, like a score, and we're just going to be going from 1 to 5, kind of the IMDb Rotten Tomatoes way. It just makes it easier, and I think it gives us a little more. I want to say, like, it makes the ratings a little more tight, Because really, we're at the same anyway, even if we go out of 10. Usually, we're pretty much on the same page.
Yeah, I mean, I started doing this when I started using Letterboxd in earnest, and it was weird. On my other podcast, The Good, Bad, and the Odd, we've rated in all sorts of ways. We did 0 to 10. At one point, we went from 0 to 100, which is mad. Because you're saying, it's 86, not 8, and it's like, what, why, what's the distinction? And now I'd stick to 0 to 5, but my co-host, Sam, has his own rating system. He goes from -10 to +10. So it's like...
I've noticed that, yeah.
and we explain it each time. But he likes that scale from negative to positive, which is reasonable.
Yeah,
reasonable.
It works.
But I think 0 to 5 works for most people. Yeah. Anyway, yes. Yeah. So we'll be doing... When we talk about a film, it is 0 to 5. That's what we're talking about.
Exactly.
We grade it with halves sometimes.
We do.
But, essentially it's 0 to 5.
The half is like, it's just almost there. But,
Yes, almost.
But, all right, with that, let's get it going here. And we're going to start out with Barbarian.
Yeah, I said A to Z, but we're starting with a B because there was no A's.
Indeed.
Enough. Barbarian. Now, this was one of the earliest ones that I watched in this cramming session. A few of these I had watched before because I do actually watch horror films, so I'd actually seen them before. But Barbarian was one of the first I watched because it was high on a lot of people's lists and got a lot of mentions. Now, this was an interesting one because it's the first of several that deal with the issue of, I guess broadly you could call it toxic masculinity. In some the fears of women have around men and the way men can be, and I know in the media, it's one of these common things. Men are horrible people, and we're not getting to that, but that is horror reflects society.
It does,
as a genre, way more than a lot of genre. I guess drama does too, right? But horror is really on the... what Stephen King describes things that, touch us deeply, almost bypassing your thought processes. He calls them phobic points, right? And I think that horror as a genre, whatever year it comes out, you can kind of work out what's going on in the zeitgeist just by watching the horror films, can't you?
I totally agree.
You can kind of see that. And it back from even the 30s and the 40s, you could kind of see it, and it's got even more so. Anyway, this is the first one of several dealing with that kind of area. And it's got some interesting social commentary, I'd say. But I have to say, thankfully, it's good enough that it doesn't feel preachy. It feels like an entertaining film.
See, that's the key, right? Because if you're preaching to your audience, you lose them very quickly. And so it's good that they're able to keep that.
Yeah. It does have an actor in it that I quite like, and he is totally disgusting and such a terrible human being in this film. And that is Richard Brake, who we saw in Tremors 7. He was the sort of big shot guy that ran the island, or was ahead of the hunters. Do you remember him?
Oh, yeah.
That guy, Richard Brake. I really like this actor. I've liked him.
He was good.
I remember seeing him in Doom. He was Joe Chill in Batman Begins.
Yeah.
He was the chemist in Mandy. And he was also in this. And he's a terrible human being. And this, in some ways, it's reflecting on the... Basically, a woman doesn't quite trust the guy she kind of has to spend time with, and it's Bill Skarsgård. It's the guy that plays Pennywise, right?
Indeed, yeah.
Who's kind of a bit always feels sketchy, but nothing he does is wrong. But he's got us kind of... So you think, is he the bad guy in this film? And you don't know. It keeps you guessing.
He's got the kind of rapey vibes.
Yeah. You get 3 types of men from different ages. The 70s guy, Mr. Horrible, totally contemptible human being. That's Richard Brake. And then there's another guy who may have committed a rape, or probably has. The subtext is he did, but he's in self-denial. But when he finds out about this first guy, by whatever means, he's like, at least I'm not him, trying to feel better about himself, which is terrible. And then And anyway, I don't want to get into too much, but yeah, solid. I thought it was a solid film. I think it's got some very it's unpredictable too. It's not a predictable film in many ways, and there are several points where you think, don't do that. That's a horrible thing to do, and you totally understand why the characters are doing certain things, even though you know it's probably going to lead to bad things. But it makes sense for them as characters. Really like Barbarian. I would give it a 4 out of 5. Anyway. Enough on Barbarian.
Very high there. And, as you say, horror does reflect society, Mark. I really think that's true. I don't think any other genre does it better, to be honest with you.
Well, it totally tackles the fears. That's what it tackles. Comedy also tackles fears, but it also can handle the good stuff and the fun stuff and the goofy stuff about what's going on. And drama kind of covers all, but horror concentrates on your fears. Sci-fi is really interesting too, but that tends to be more allegorical, in the way it's analysed in society. But yeah.
Very true. All very great points. Our next one is one I did see the trailer for this and wanted to get to it, just never had enough time, and that is Black Phone. Black Phone,
yes. Story by Joe Hill, Stephen King's son. And people often reflect that he's just recycling his dad's stuff, which I think is not fair. I haven't read anything by him, but I've got no reason to believe he's not a good writer in his own right. And, I love Stephen King. And this one feels in many respects, because it's set in the 70s, it's kind of got a slight, It or Stranger Things kind of vibe. But it is way more gritty than those.
I was going to say that, like, for example,
the school bully, or the violence in the school is way more intense than anything we've seen in any of those. Really can be quite horrible, but it feels real because the 70s was kind of like that. But there's a little girl in this who is hilarious. And there's one point a kid gets kidnapped, and I saw a comment on Facebook like, if that guy had kidnapped that little girl, he wouldn't have lived, She'd have killed him. Yeah. It's kind of funny. And it's interesting because Ethan Hawke's in it as basically the bad guy, which is quite a surprise because and he does a great performance. He wears a mask a lot of the time, but he's acting through it really well.
Huh.
I really, really enjoyed this one. It doesn't quite gel because it's got lots of different threads about family interrelationships. Like, for example, it looks like it might be a story about abusive parent, and I mean physically abusive parent. Right. But in fact, the parent's quite loving, but doesn't know. In the end, you kind of realise he doesn't know how to express himself, and is a bit quick with the belt. So,
yes.
Do you see what I mean?
Absolutely.
But it kind of is interesting in that way because it's grey. It's not black and white. It's not that's bad and this is good. It's kind of grey, which is much more like real life.
It is. Yeah.
And it doesn't quite gel. And there's certain bits in it where things happen a bit like, did that just happen?
Right.
Especially the end. The end feels a little rushed, I'd say. But having said that, I still think it's a very solid film. Quite an interesting one, too. I'd give this a 4 as well.
Again, high praise. And that's still on my list, my watch list, which is never ending, as you know, Mark. Both video games and movies, I have just this huge backlog of. And, horror movies, of course, are kind of number one on my list. They take precedence. So
yes, indeed.
The next one, Bodies. 3 bodies.
Now this is a comedy horror, a horror-comedy, as we say, and it's basically a whodunit with a touch of the slasher. So it's horror, but not quite. It's horror adjacent. It's kind of people in young people in a house. Someone dies. And everyone starts suspecting everyone else. So it's got a touch of the old paranoia about it. But overall, I'd say it's a good time. There is a final act where it does really descend into what is comes across as Generation Z whining a lot, whining about their lives. So there is that problem. I also kind of got it confused thinking back on another film from this year, which I like a little better than this, but they are very similar premises in that young people in a house, someone dies, things start precipitating. This is a common thing, isn't it? A common trope in horror and horror adjacent thrillers. You know, bad things start happening when someone dies, and things precipitate from that.
Many horror movies like that.
But it was fun. It was there was a decent comedy strand running through it. But the characters, when they start whining, it kind of gets, you know. But having said that, I still quite liked it. I gave it a 3.5 on Letterboxd, but I think it was quite generous that day. It's more like a 3. But, you know, you watch for yourself and see what you think. Bodies, yeah.
All right. Next up, we have Bones and All.
Yeah, now this one came from nowhere for me. I thought I understood what I was going to see.
Yeah, I've not heard of this one.
It's essentially... I'll try and set out without spoiling it too much, but essentially, it turns out certain people have this impulse to cannibalism.
Huh.
Which mostly they keep under wraps, but sometimes it just precipitates, right? And it's about a young girl who suddenly develops this, or has developed it, but it's not precipitated, but then it suddenly precipitates at a party, a sleepover of all places, but not in a everyone dies way, in a oh my god, why did she do that to someone else way? And then from that she becomes kind of a runaway, and then she starts to meet other people of her own kind. So it's almost like this bad gene or this weird gene in some way where they got this craving. It's like alcoholism or gambling, I guess, or something like that. It's a craving. However, it kind of then evolves into a love story, but it's a complex drama around that. It's not A to B, you know, it's not just real simple stuff. There's a complexity to what's going on here, and I really like this one. I put my note on this may be the best horror love story I've seen since Spring, which came out in 2014.
Man,
great film,
that's real high praise.
Great film.
Yeah.
Bones and All really surprised me how good it was. Again, I give this a 4.
Wow.
So you can see these are batting high. This is batting high.
Absolutely. Man, well, very cool. All right, next up we have one that we've both seen, and that would be Candyland.
In fact, you watched it before I did. Again, enjoyed it. Wasn't quite sure if it was horror. It was close enough, though, right? Certainly towards the end.
Again, set in the 70s. We have a lot of kind of 70s horror going on or in 2022, I should say. But yeah, I really... I thought the concept of this was really interesting just when I saw the trailer. So I was excited to watch this. And, as soon as we could get it, I was like, okay, let's talk about this.
Yeah, it's not predictable. It's not. Basically, it's kind of a sad setting. It's basically sex workers at a truck stop, and they call it Candyland, and it's been running for years. That's the sad premise. What the better premise is, these women are not victims to anyone. They are, looking after themselves. They are doing what they not want to do, but they're doing it without a sense of victimhood. And in fact, when someone comes in and tries to sort of say, someone fairly religious comes in and sort of says, "We can save you," they won't have any of it. They will not have any of it.
They're not even interested in hearing anything.
No, and it's kind of interesting, but other stuff happens in it that isn't part of the main story, like deaths and things, and you think, okay, where's this going? And there's even this kind of sheriff guy that's taking money from them, but also watching over them. But his trajectory is really odd as well. You think he's not going to give a crap about anything, but it turns out he's in love with one of the people who work in this place. And I have to say, men and women work at this place too. I mean, there's one man really, but
Yeah.
Again, something really bad happens to him, but he doesn't become a victim to it. He'll sort of fight back. It's kind of interesting that way. So it felt a bit more realistic than the usual sort of binary, good, bad sort of side of things. Interesting film.
It's interesting because it's obviously kind of a low budget, right? But I'm not saying the production qualities aren't high, but most of it takes place in one location, with the exception of a few scenes. You've got kind of the little hotel attached to the gas station, so most of it, or attached to the truck stop, I should say. So most of it is going on there, and I think I always kind of like these films when they are just sort of single location horror. In many respects, this was a drama first and a horror second, but it was a solid drama, right? Exactly. The horror really takes place at the end. I guess you could say some stuff that happens in between is fairly horrible, but I think the real, horror genre fans are going to be most interested in the stuff that happens at the end, because it's pretty brutal, man.
Yeah, man. And
I won't say anything, but
and you don't get a lead on who's doing stuff for quite some time into it, and it comes as a shock as well.
Yeah.
But this creepiest scene, and I'm trying to avoid spoilers. The creepiest scene is there's like a creepy old pastor.
Oh my god, it's so
parson.
cringy.
He's so cringy and weird, and oh god.
That was my reaction to Mark. But he comes there, obviously, to have sex with one of the workers, and he takes his false teeth out.
Yeah,
and I was oh jeez, it's man. That's what I mean.
And there is a creepy line. There's a creepy line that really creeped me out. Was he goes to this girl, "Are you a Christian?" And she says, "Yeah." She goes, "Oh, I'm a Christian too."
Yeah,
with a big grin on his face, and it's like, oh.
I'm like, dude, who shows up in their pastor's uniform to be with a prostitute? Like, what?
So weird.
Crazy.
So weird.
Creepy, man.
It reminded me, there was a similar character in Santa's Sleigh, wasn't there? I do remember.
Yes.
But this guy was
the fallen pastor, which, over the years, there's been plenty. Even going back to medieval times, you have a lot of
popes,
medieval,
right?
Yeah, most. You have so many stories about the clergy engaging in activities that they shouldn't be.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, but Candyland I felt was solid. I personally give this a 3.5. What would you give this?
Oh man, I really like this one. I think 3.5 is the right rating for this. I lean a little bit more towards a 4.
Yeah.
But yeah, I liked it a lot. I do recommend it. Just know it's not high budget kind of horror. But it's well done. Really well acted. I didn't know any of the actors in this.
The acting was but the acting was absolutely terrific. I have to say, acting and the cinematography, it was really good. This is a feature again of this year's horror fair. A lot of them look really good. And I'm guessing because digital cameras are getting better and better, and I also suspect the filters are getting better and better. So the is looking more and more like film than digital. So I think that's something to do with it. There's one in particular that looked as good as anything we're not got to yet, but who looks as good as any film you've ever seen. It's that good. And I'll talk about that when we get to that one. But Candyland looked great. Really terrific. There was some terrific shots, like near when the sun was setting and the girls are kind of just sitting around. There was all sorts. Yeah. I really liked it.
Yeah, it's a very kind of rural film, and, you've definitely... You've kind of got that separation in it between hey, these are the good Christian folks and these are the evil, quote unquote, sex workers, and it's really looking at kind of the sex workers' lives back in the 70s, which I found to be very fascinating because nowadays I think it's, I don't want to say it for all people, but it's still controversial, sex workers here in America.
It is in most places,
Yeah, I know... You guys are a little more liberal on that, right?
A little, I think, but not that liberal. It's not illegal to be a prostitute, but it's
Right,
illegal to solicit. No, that soliciting is being a prostitute. It's illegal to proposition or so. I don't quite know. Basically, it's more on the men than the women who do it. It's more on the men that try and use it. But I don't really know, to be honest. I don't really know.
Yeah, here in the States, it is illegal in like everywhere except Las Vegas, and not even in Nevada. Like from what I understand, you have to go outside of the main like Nevada area if you want to engage in such activity. So it's really frowned upon here in the States. But, you know, I find it interesting, like, hey, here's why people choose to do this. And, you know, I think their stories need to be heard, too.
Yeah.
Because usually there is a good reason for why they want to do it, or sometimes it's just money. Sometimes that's the bottom line. But, yeah, fascinating story, fascinating characters, great acting, good camera work. You know, soundtrack is good. So
yeah, it's really not. Yeah, I wouldn't argue with a 4. I'm not. It's just this is my personal.
I lean towards a 4.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. Okay,
all right.
The first right now. Before I go on, there are several films here that I don't rate highly, but I would totally understand if someone rated them higher. I could just see it's a point of view thing. However, this one, the next one, I think is just a bad film. It's one of the few I think that is a genuinely bad film from 2022, and it's called Choose or Die. It's a British horror film, and it's one of those ones where someone finds a video game and it's kind of cursed, and they got to go through these things to try not to die. Basically, it's one of those. Now, it's a bit weird because I can't. The acting's good. There's some good actors in it, and the ideas are good, but it just doesn't work. It just feels incoherent, clunky. The tension doesn't build in any way all throughout, and I just did like it. Having said that, I still gave it 1.5, so there must have been some things about it, but I barely remember it, and I just remember getting a bit annoyed at it after a certain point. You know, where there's a thing where you try and invest, but you're like, yeah, I'm out now. I can't do this and can't enjoy this. I did watch it all, but I did enjoy it. Choose or Die, 1.5, I would give that. Yeah.
You know, I love the premise, obviously, having to do with video games. I'm a gamer, lifelong, but I've seen things like that done before. Actually, the Angry Video Game Nerd has a Possessed arcade game episode that is pretty well done. It makes me wonder if Choose or Die kind of got the idea from that. I'm sure there's probably other films that go back further than that. But, man, if someone could do that and have, like, really good execution, I would love to see it. So it's a shame this one does not do that.
Well, there probably is one. I just can't think of it off the top of my head.
Yeah, I can't either. I was trying to think too.
Right, okay. Well, the next one is by David Cronenberg, of all people. David Cronenberg, Crimes of the Future. Now, he had a film out in the early 70s called Crimes of the Future. This has no relationship to that film whatsoever. He just reused the title. Now, this is an interesting film in that it's set in a future where evolution's massively accelerated and it's about a couple that kind of do performance art, which involves the woman doing surgery on the man in front of the audience and removing a major organ. But this guy has the ability for it to grow back after a few days. So that's their work and their art, right?
Huh. Interesting.
Yeah, this was rubbish. Unfortunately, I love David Cronenberg. The Fly is one of my favourite horror films, films of all time. I love The Fly.
Yeah, me too.
But there are several others great films he did. And it's weird, because this was a return back. I mean, he did a lot of non-genre films, like The Act of Violence and things like that. So this was his first horror sci-fi movie since one called Existence, which was made in 1999, which is I've never seen, but I understand is okay, and I think that might be sort of analysing video game in the way like Videodrome analysed TV, right? But I've never seen it.
Viggo Mortensen's in this too, right?
Viggo Mortensen, Lea Seydoux, they're the couple we're talking about. Kristen Stewart's in it. And I have to say, Kristen Stewart, everything I've seen her in lately, I've really liked. She's really good. And it's weird because I saw her before she did Twilight in a Jumanji kind of film, but I can't remember what it's called, where she was quite young. And she was good in that. So I always thought she was... I think she's always been a good actress, but I don't think that Twilight stuff suited her at all or did her any favours in terms of being taken seriously. However, she was good in it. However, the film was pretentious nonsense, it felt like to me.
Man, that's a shame.
However, if someone came on and said, this is one of the greatest films I've ever seen, I would give it... I'd be like, okay. I couldn't argue with that. It's a point of view. Whereas Choose or Die was... quite obviously not good. Crimes of the Future, there was nothing wrong with it in terms of how it looked, how it was acted. It just felt like nonsense to me, and unenjoyable and unengaging nonsense. But I have to stress that's a point of view. I understand that's a point of view, and if someone's got a different view, I wouldn't argue with that. I wouldn't say you're wrong.
I wouldn't either. I mean, I think that's what's great about all genres, of course, but horror in particular. You know, we have so many subgenres within horror. I think everyone has their favorites, and same with sci-fi and everything else. But yeah. So interesting kind of point of view there, Mark. So moving on, next we have Day Shift.
Day Shift. This was, I think, it was on free on a streaming service, either Netflix or Prime, and I think it was Netflix. This was Jamie Foxx as a vampire hunter, like a professional vampire hunter. Yeah, now I quite like this. However, it didn't quite stack up.
It's not Django, huh?
No, it's not Django, that's for sure.
Which is kind of what I was hoping. I was hoping, like, okay, vampire hunting Django was sort of what I envisioned when I heard this was coming out.
It was a good first act, good setup. You knew what was to expect, and a good final act. It just was way too baggy in the middle, and went on too long. It needed tightening up in that middle act, and also some of the comedy wasn't that funny. There was something, I don't know if it's in the edit or something, but it was kind of, that should have been funnier than it was. Some of the action scenes were great, and some were, we should have seen more from that. There should have been more to that. So basically, it didn't quite have enough comedy or action for me, and it was baggy in the middle. But it was still fun, and I quite liked it. I'll still give it a 3. I'll give it a 3. So, but there was a slightly better vampire night film in this, in the set we're going to be talking about, and I'll talk about it when we get to it. Well, I'll tell you what it's called. Slayers is the one that I felt was better, but we'll get to that when we get to S. All right.
So next up is one we both saw, and that is Deadstream. I really liked this one.
Yeah, I really liked it. I recommended it quite strongly to you, didn't I? After I watched it, I said, you're going to like this one.
And you were very right. I really enjoyed it. Very well done.
Yeah, and it's kind of a fun found footage meets The Evil Dead.
I think that's a really good comparison.
Evil Dead 2 specifically. Yeah. Not horrific, goofy horror. Basically, this streamer, this guy who's so annoying but funny.
And I feel like that's a real accurate take on so many streamers nowadays. And maybe, I'm going to sound like an old man here, but I just don't get why people watch a lot of these streamers. and this guy captured that perfectly.
He was great. Wow. He was terrific. He was funny, but it was like, oh God, this guy's so annoying, but you keep laughing.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And he's like interacting with his streamer. Basically, he sets himself a challenge. He's going to stay in this haunted house all night.
Right.
And he's got escrowed up $100,000. So if he doesn't do it, he loses that money. That's the challenge. But he's also at some point, one of his groupies turns up, and he's interacting with her. And and they've got all these other cameras in the house. And at one point, you see something move on one of the cameras, and you see the chatter, right?
I loved it.
And they're saying, "Get out of the house, bro. There's something in there." And he's going, "No, you're messing with me." Then he watches the stream back, and he's going, "Oh my God, Did one of you do this? Yes. He thinks a hacker's got in and is messing with him.
Yeah.
And then the groupie kind of, or the fan turns up and she kind of gets involved in it. And all sorts of weird and wonderful things. It did remind me of, there was a British film from a while back that's very low rated if you check any of the reviews. But I quite like it. And it's basically it's British, slightly camp guy who's a paranormal investigator. Found footage, goes to this farm where stuff's supposed to happen. And it's watching him freak out, and he's kind of camp, so that makes it funnier when he's freaking out. But there was one or two genuine jump out your seats moments. I literally jumped up in one moment, and I really like that film, and it made me laugh. Paranormal Farm, that's called. I think it's probably 7 or 8 years old, but this one reminded me of that. Yeah, but this one's much more conventional, and there was a lot going. I'm going to watch the maker of this. I think the guy in it was like the central creative as well. I could be wrong.
Oh, wow.
But I think I'll keep an eye on this and sort of see. But Deadstream was fun. What would you give it?
You know, I think I'm at a 4 for this, Mark. I really like Deadstream a lot. In fact, this is a film I will come back to. It's, it's funny, but it's got some really good scares in there too. It's funny because when we started UNH, I just hated found footage films, and I know you and Becky, you guys were like, oh man, there are good ones out there, and I'm like, man, I haven't seen any.
Yeah, there are a few really good ones, but most of them aren't. Blair Witch is good, I think.
You guys like Blair Witch, and I'm not a big Blair Witch guy, but man, you guys have really gotten me to come around to found footage a lot over the years. And Deadstream is another great example of found footage.
Yeah, it's very fun.
I like it a lot.
Yeah, well, the thing is, found footage and fake documentary, mockumentaries kind of meld into the same area. This is a bit of both, isn't it? Yeah. Really, it's kind of
it is,
but it's set in real time. But it goes for laughs as well as jumps. And I did jump a few times in this, but it was more comedy. I feel like it's more Evil Dead 2 kind of laughs, Yes, it's kind of that
absolutely.
Sort of thing. There was definitely a bit of that in it.
Yeah, what would you give it?
I'd give it a 3. I'll give it a straight 3. I liked it well enough, but it was lightweight for me. It was pretty lightweight, but I kind of enjoyed it while I was watching. But it stuck in my head a bit, so, there is that.
Yeah, I think I enjoyed it because it was kind of lightweight. I agree. I think that's another good point. It is rather lightweight, and I don't want to say it's like forgettable because I certainly remember it, but it's by the same token, like you're not gonna like focus on it the next day and like, oh man, let me think about the topics of this film. Now our next one is based on a famous Stephen King book. I've actually read the book. I've never seen any of the films, believe it or not. Firestarter. It's a remake, right?
Yeah, well, it's a redo of the novel, really.
Oh, redo, okay.
I guess there are certain elements where it is kind of picking up from the first movie. I really like the first movie, I have to say. It's not great or anything, but it's fun. It's fun. Didn't like this.
Is the first one pretty accurate to the book? Not this one, but the original.
It's been a while since I've read the book or watched the film, but I believe it's quite accurate. Yeah, I mean, if the book were edited down into a script, it would be that.
Okay,
right?
Yeah.
So there's major sections in the book that aren't in the film, but
right.
They've not changed the story. It's just that bit wasn't shown, or it was explained in very quick exposition kind of thing. This, for me, I didn't like. It felt pointless, and also it was kind of channeling at the turn of the 2000s to 2010, a lot of stuff was kind of miserable and dour.
Yeah.
I'm looking at you, the remake of Salem's Lot. I'm looking at you when I say that. It's basically not fun at all. No. And this kind of has that vibe, and it's a bit unfortunate. Zac Efron's in it as the dad, which is kind of interesting. So the dad role is expanded a little more, though the dad role's kind of significant in the book and the first movie. But the first movie is well worth watching. Drew Barrymore and Jill C. Scott.
Yeah, I want to check the first one out, but I mean, really, like sometimes when they do these remakes, Mark, I'm just like, the original film's not even that old, you know?
Yeah. If you consider a remake, it's got to be... There's lots of good horror remakes. I know a lot of people are down on remakes, but there are lots. The Hills Have Eyes remake is really good. Maniac, if you've ever seen the original Maniac, it's a skeevy, really intense film from the late 70s, right? Watch the 2012 one, completely different vibe, but very skeevy still, and very intense. That was a great remake. For example, I really like Dawn of the Dead remake. I prefer Dawn of the Dead original, but I think the remake, Zack Snyder's Dawn of the Dead is a really good film.
Yes.
For example.
Yeah, I thought so as well. I was pleasantly surprised.
But Firestarter, they got this wrong. It was a good example of a good remake. The recent movie. Yeah. Another poor example of a bad remake is Carrie. They did Carrie, didn't they? Not good. Not a good remake. Though I do think... I have to say, certain properties, I think, lend themselves to being remade because they carry themes that resonate through generations. Carrie, I think, is actually quite a good thing to remake. It's just not been done well. Even though the original film is perfectly good, I think there's different theme. Bullying happens in different ways, for example, now.
Right.
So that lends itself to a good filmmaker will make something good from that. The way they did with it, right? The way they did with it.
Absolutely.
Other remake, and some are middling, like the Pet Sematary one. The first one's way better. It was interesting, but it wasn't great, for example.
Very disappointing, I think, for Pet Sematary as well. But, I mean, I don't want to, discount all horror remakes, because that's not fair. You know, I thought The Evil Dead, I guess you'd call it a remake, but it's very different from the original. But
the one that was about 8 years ago, is that the one?
About 8 years ago.
Because there is a recent one that's sometimes I hear it's good and sometimes I hear it's not. I don't know. I haven't seen it, but it's probably worth a look. It's probably worth a look.
It's one I want to see for sure. But so I don't want to discount all remakes, but at the same time, come on, guys. Some of these don't need to be remade. They're not old.
Yeah, but Firestarter, I think I was feeling generous when I rated this. I gave it a 2, and I feel like that was generous, actually. Yeah. The next movie is one interesting one. It's called Fresh. Now, I mentioned right at the beginning, and I've said there were several, and we haven't mentioned it since, about toxic masculinity and stuff like that. And
the Me Too movement has certainly made that a very big topic. Last year and even a year before that, and I mean, it's still in the zeitgeist. You know, it's still going on. We're talking about it.
And I feel like it's interesting that horror's covering it because it's covering the anxieties of women, basically, I believe. That's the focus, which is fine. And this one, Fresh, it's called, is kind of about... First, it starts off to be about modern dating and when you're early in a relationship, say, and things like that. And it stars Sebastian Stan, which is kind of interesting. The Winter Soldier himself. And then it takes a veer to the left. Unfortunately, the poster gives away what the veer is, which is a shame. I was quite surprised because I watched the film, then I Googled it, and then I saw the poster. Well, that poster tells you what's going to happen. So I'm glad I didn't see the poster before I saw the film.
I'm just Googling it now.
You're going to work out what the film's about. Well, we may as well talk about it. So... I guess minor spoilers because it happens fairly early, and I suspect the trailer will show this too. Essentially, this man is, making himself. He's a good-looking guy, charming, and all that. He's making himself.
The man, the trailer does give it away. My gosh.
Yeah, basically, he's trapping women and selling their body parts for fresh meat. That is, but not as let's slaughter him. He's keeping them alive so the meat's as fresh as possible and taking bit by bit, which is grim, right? It's grim.
That is grim. But man, the poster does give away that he's what he is.
Yeah. And essentially, he's not only is he this horrible person, he wants his victims to like him. He kind of, and this girl that he's got trapped, great. I can't remember the actress's name, but she's really British actress, really good. She kind of realises she can start playing him, and she kind of starts.
Is it Daisy Edgar Jones?
Yes, I believe it is. She's really good. She starts to sort of pretend that she's into him. And then we see other things. I'll spoil it too much if I go on much further. Right. But it's really well acted, really well made, solid film. Not scary, I'd say. Not particularly scary, but an interesting... It's more like a drama with a hot horror patina over it. I mean, it's horrific. Doing that is horrific, right?
God. Yeah.
It's kind of another one of those, and I quite liked it. I would give this a 3.5.
Oh, that's okay. That's a good rating, I would say. Really good. Yeah. There's a lot of these kind of movies, but the turn, it definitely sounds like it kind of gives it away. It almost sounds like a Lifetime movie, maybe with horror elements. Because there's a lot of Lifetime movies where seems like the guy is good, and then he turns out to just be this evil, sadistic killer, essentially.
Yeah, it's always that. Original. I'm trying to. I think probably the film that did this originally. I mean, you could probably find earlier versions, but the classic is probably from the 40s. There's a film called Gaslight.
Oh, I've heard of that one, yeah.
Yeah, I watched it recently for the first time. Great film. Ingrid Bergman. Where a guy basically charms a woman, is a really nice husband, but then he starts... Yeah,
you and Sam were talking about that.
I was talking about it on my podcast. But essentially, he starts basically undermining her. Oh, you've forgotten this, haven't you? Oh, you keep forgetting things. It's all that kind of business, which is where the term gaslighting comes from. And this is kind of a horror version of that kind of... Well, no, this guy isn't gaslighting her. He drugs them and traps them. But she starts to fight back in the only way she can. Because she's chained up and she's trapped. She's saying, well, if you took these chains off, we could have a meal together. It's all that kind of thing. And when she gets the chance to actually act, man, she does not hold back, I have to say. So it's very satisfying in that way. So it's interesting. There was a few of these films where it starts with, well, this guy seems okay, so... Oh, I think I'm going to take a chance. It's things like that.
But I wish we had a female perspective on this because, Mark, I don't think you and I can relate to it.
No, we should always apologise. Whenever we talk about things of a different race and a different gender and a different sexuality, perhaps, we should always apologise for. We are just doing our best, but we're not. As best as we can, we're not trying to mansplain or whatever.
Yeah, but we do. It would be interesting because I do wonder, like, from a woman's point of view, because I know that is a very legitimate fear. Like, man, okay, is this guy really who he says he is? And I think again with the Me Too stuff, with all the Harvey Weinstein stuff that came out, it's rather fascinating that these films are examining those fears and bringing them to light. So I would like to watch.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. The whole thing about attraction as well is kind of interesting because confidence is an attractive quality.
Yeah,
people tend to like other people that are confident, but confidence. You go a little too far, you go into being a dickhead.
That's the thing, right? Yeah.
And then you get into, if you go further, it's even, and so on. So it's kind of an interesting thing. Sebastian Stan is really good in it, and the girl whose name you mentioned, she's really good in it. It wasn't particularly scary or anything like that, and for that reason, I'll give it 3.5, but I think it's a good film.
Awesome. And the next one, Goodnight Mommy.
Good night, Mummy. Yeah, this is one of those ones. Let me give you the high, what do they call it? The elevator pitch for this.
There you
go. Basically, a woman stuck with slightly scary kids, or perhaps she's the scary one, and you're not sure who's the scary one in this because they both the kids and her she's the mother. But one of the problems is one of the kids thinks she's not the mother. So there's that kind of vibe going on. It's not scary. It's not scary. Interesting film. And Naomi Watts is a great actress anyway, in everything, right? And the kids are also, the two boys who are character featured in this are also kind of interesting. It's got a touch of if you think about films like The Others, or The Innocents, even, something like that. Anything based on Turn of the Screw. It's kind of that thing. Kids being a little odd, or are they? Are they just reacting to something that's odd being done to them? It's kind of one of those. And it was okay. It was okay, but not scary. Not scary. I gave it a 3. I think I was being generous that day, but I gave it a 3.
So not bad, but not great, huh? Yeah, always a good premise, though. I mean, I've seen kids do and say some really strange things in my my time, and I have to say, I love the title, Good Night, Mommy. Really good title.
Good Night, Mommy.
Next up, The Harbinger.
The Harbinger. Yeah, now this one, I need to... my memory's a bit blank on this one, but it was one of those ones where someone accidentally curses themselves. It was one of those. I'm going to Google it because this is going to... So sorry about this. I'm going to... it was one of those. It's one of those, like The Ring or The Grudge or something like that.
I love The Ring.
It was that kind of vibe.
Particularly the Japanese... Well, actually, both versions of The Ring do it really well. Kind of we've got 7 days. Otherwise, we're screwed.
Yeah. Now, I have to mention this. I mentioned earlier there was 2 films with the same name came out in 2020. This is it. The Harbinger. There's 2 different Harbingers. So I'm Googling it now, but I'm seeing the stuff about the other film. Now, I can't remember much about it, but I did give it 3.5. And I also said it's not scary. So that leads me to believe it's no memory of this at all. That it was really well made and acted. But because I wouldn't have given it 3.5 unless it had been scary. But not, you know what I mean? If it's not scary, but it's interesting. But yeah. Now I do know the other film, the one I didn't watch, had ratings of 4 out of 10. So led me to believe I picked the right one here. But yeah, it's there's something lurking, and it's no obvious reason why it's picking on certain people, but it is. It's focusing on certain people. And I think there's a dream aspect to it too, if I remember rightly. But yeah, it was okay. I don't want to talk about it anymore because I can't really remember it.
Well, the next one we both watched, and I think we both have pretty strong opinions on this. And we've been holding off on talking about this one for a while now. That is Halloween Ends. And wow. What a film indeed, and not in a good way.
Boy, what a film. Yeah, I think when I watched this, I actually posted in UNH about this, and I think what I said was, wow, here's a film that climbed up the bad decision tree, then fell out the tree, hitting every branch on the way down, and then the tree fell on it, right? There's so many bad decisions. So many bad decisions that derailed this film.
I didn't find the second Halloween, in this franchise to be particularly great either. I mean, COVID was going on, so I kind of understood. Maybe they were limited. So I was a little more understanding for that one, even though I thought it was bad too. But Halloween Ends is worse. I mean, I couldn't believe it.
I have to say, this was my one-word review that I put on Letterboxd for Halloween Ends. What? Question mark. That was it. That's all I put for the review. It was so weird. Why would you derail Michael Myers as the main bad guy being a second to an annoying teen,
Yeah, and I mean the focus on him isn't particularly interesting.
No,
and it's weird because then the daughter of Jamie Lee Curtis, she falls in love. Laurie Strode, thank you. She falls in love with this guy and. Just kind of for no reason, out of nowhere, and I'm like, what is going on here?
It was
so I didn't.
Oh, bad decision after bad decision.
Bad acting. Just why is Michael Myers, after going through the hospital again and killing a ton of people, why is he suddenly powerless and sitting in a sewer? And why does he appoint this guy? I just have so many questions because the script is terrible.
Yeah, man. It's bad. It's like, honestly, when I was watching, I was thinking, this feels like someone said, let's make a film to annoy all Halloween fans.
Yeah.
Let's just do that.
And what's weird is these are the same guys that made the Halloween,
the first one, the
kind
first
of remake.
one of
the first
trilogy,
one, and it was
that was solid. That was solid.
I really enjoyed that film. I saw that one in theaters, and that was the big kind of comeback, and everyone was so excited. Like, all right, Halloween is back, man! But God, it definitely fizzled out by the end, and it's a shame because I feel like these guys had some real momentum going with that first film.
Yeah, I have to say, I think I'm checking my own review on this because I did watch it because I was being really OCD and watching. Because I didn't want to watch the third one until I watched the second one. So, not only have I done that, all these films, I have watched any intermediate films. Yeah, it's not bad.
Hardcore, Mark.
Yeah, man.
That is why I say you are the doctor of horror, man. Like,
really are. I didn't mind Halloween Kills. I gave it a 3 out of 5. Right, and what I wrote was reasonable sequel.
You liked it more than I did.
Yeah, reasonable sequel to the okay-ish Halloween 2018, but you can't help feeling it's all a bit past its sell-by date. I like the badass ending that teases what comes next. Boy, was that a tease that let down as well. Oh
man, was it ever. I mean, honestly, I think it softened the blow for me a little bit because I knew a little bit going in because, the internet.
Yeah.
But for once, I'm actually glad I had that part of it spoiled for me because if I had gone in knowing nothing,
going in from that badass ending in Halloween Kills,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean that ending of Kills made it look like it was going to really power up into something fantastic, didn't it? And it didn't. It so didn't.
It didn't at all. I mean, the only thing I can say good about it is. There are a few really memorable kill scenes that are done pretty well. I mean, they're not like gonna just they're not gonna take your breath away, but they're not bad. Like in the house with the couple, that's done. That was controversial, by the way, but I thought it was done well, and I thought it was done in a tasteful manner. But it was still controversial, of course. But. Well executed.
Having said that, I think if I ever watch anything from this trilogy, I might well watch this first. Mainly because I can't quite believe it was as bad as I remember it. But it is. It is.
Yeah.
It is.
It is. It's. I mean, like I say, I think the main problem too is the main character is not, as you say, he's a teenager. He's not particularly interesting. We kind of feel maybe some sympathy for him at the beginning, but then that sort of just goes out the window because let's just spoil this part here. If you don't want to know anything, skip ahead a few minutes, but here it comes. At the beginning, the teenage killer guy accidentally knocks a kid off the stairwell and kills the kid, and he feels terrible about it, and the town overreacts basically and turns him into this horrible villain. And then he sort of slowly becomes what the town of Haddonfield has sort of made him out to be all along. But I don't know why.
And his trajectory didn't make any sense. It just didn't make any sense at all. It's like, why would you... I don't know. It was almost like he became possessed by something else, but that wasn't signaled at all in the film, but it was just weird. It was just weird.
I don't know if they were trying to sort of do a passing of the torch thing. I
did not work.
I feel like they were trying to make some kind of commentary. I don't know if it was about people's overreaction with COVID going on, or I'm not really sure what the message was, Mark.
yeah, it was weird. I just thought it was silly, and whoever wrote the script had no idea what they were going for. That's how it felt to me.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess they gave the directors a lot of power because of the success of the first film, but man, it's unfortunate because they really had something great going with that first Halloween film. I don't think it's the best Halloween film, mind you. I don't think anything's going to beat the original Carpenter film.
Oh no, nothing. The standouts for me are I like 1, 2, 3, and I quite like H2O. I quite like.
I do
H2O.
as well.
Yeah,
I do too.
But yeah,
And I actually, I mean, I've defended Rob Zombie's Halloween before. I know a lot of people hate that film.
Yeah, I'm not.
But I love it, man.
It's better than his Jason. Or what did he do to... Oh, I don't know. No. It doesn't matter. Yeah, no, I'm not a fan.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan.
Man, we'll talk about Rob Zombie
Right,
later.
so I actually gave
what's
this...
your rating for this?
2, which I think
2.
is quite generous. Yeah, I think
I think that is generous. I'm going to give it a 1.
It looked alright. I have to say it looked alright. That's
did.
about what you can say about it. And some of the kills were quite cool.
The
okay.
camera work's not bad.
Yeah.
But, man, it didn't feel like a Halloween film to me, and that's the biggest problem.
Yeah,
really.
Yeah.
The tone was wrong. I mean, we could go on and on about how bad this was. For me, it just, I'm like, man, people hate on the Rob Zombie film. Watch Halloween Ends, and you'll think the Rob Zombie films are great.
Yeah.
Moving on. Hatching.
Yeah, Hatching. Interesting movie. I think it was Finnish. It's foreign language. I think it was Finnish. I really like this. It was quite a bit different from what you'd expect. It's one of those stories about, I say one of those stories, they're not that common. Basically, a little girl's got quite a controlling mother who wants life to be perfect, and it's the psycho mother. It's not the horror thing in this, horror element, but she kind of is. It's one of those, Frankenstein's not the monster, but yes, he is really. It's one of those, you know what I mean? So she's not the monster, but she is monstrous in that she wants her daughter to be a certain thing. A bit like the mother in Black Swan, say, right? Something like that. Yeah. Now, one of the things I like about this film, I think the whole film's really good, but it's got some excellent practical effects.
Nice.
I'll talk about the first part of the story without getting to the end too much to try and avoid some spoilers, but there are some spoilers on this. Essentially, it's the things kick off. We see this premise, and this girl appears this family seems happy. The dad is kind of there, but not there. You know, he's one of those kind of dads. He's around, but he keeps very quiet. And it's all about the mother and daughter interacting, but the mother's super intense all the time. But then a bird gets into the house. The little girl, they catch it, the little girl thinks they're just going to lay it in the garden, but the mother says, no, give it to me, and she just casually breaks its neck.
Oh.
Much to the little girl's upset.
Oh.
Right? I'll say little girl, she's like 10, I guess.
Yeah.
But then she wakes up and hears some sort of cawing, goes out, and she finds this bird not dead.
Huh.
Or a bird like it, not dead, but there's also an egg there. Quite a large egg, but an egg. So she takes the egg in, but then things happen. And a thing emerges from the egg, which is kind of bird-like. It was kind of like a Muppet effect, you know? Or a Dark Crystal effect. It was kind of a thing that she started to look after. Because, you know, this guilt about her mother. But then her mother reveals things about herself that upsets the little girl, even though she pretends, oh, I'm really happy for you. As long as you're happy, I'm happy. But the mother's doing things that is upsetting the family dynamic, and the little girl's upset with that. Meanwhile, this kind of thing she's keeping it in her room, and it's kind of and there's a psychic link, and stuff starts happening. It's a body horror film, nominally, but it's about the linkage between a monster and a person, which we've seen a few other films do, right? E.T. is a classic one. Elliot and E.T. are psychically bonded, aren't they?
They are, yeah. That's a good example.
Yeah, an interesting, quite a compelling film. Like, you can't take your eyes off it when you're watching it. It's one of those kind of films.
I think I'm going to have to check
Very
this one out.
different. Yeah, it was good. And it's not called The Hatching, it's called Hatching.
Hatching. Gotcha.
Yeah.
2022. Which are all these films. So if you're wondering which version, you know.
It's Hatching 2020. Apart from The Harbinger, good luck with that. So Hatching, yeah. I gave this a 3.5. I thought it was very solid.
High score. Yeah, very cool. I'll check this one out too, Mark. I tend to like weird body horror films, you know, that really kind of speaks to me. I think it speaks to a lot of people.
Yeah.
So, Next up, we have Hellhole. I like the title already.
Now, I'd actually completed 50, thinking I'd seen everything, and then suddenly 2 came obvious to me I'd missed, and Hellhole was one of these. It was on one of the streaming services, I think probably Netflix, I'm not entirely sure, and it said 2022. Now, often they say 2022, but when you look into it, it's like from 2018 or something, and I think this might have been one of those, but it had not been output until 2020, so I went with it, right? Now, this one's set, I can't remember the country, but somewhere in Europe. There's basically something sketchy happen. This monastery that specialises in I think it's Poland actually, specialises in exorcisms. Something sketchy has been going on, like the girls who go to be exorcised disappear, and the Vatican send like an investigator who is also an exorcist in. No, sorry, I got that wrong. A new exorcist turns up and they say, oh, it's always nice to... But it turns out he's actually not a priest at all. He's like a policeman. And he's investigating. So there's a touch of the... I don't know, what's it called? Name of the Rose. It's set in a monastery. A very dark and dank place. And things start precipitating. So in some respects, it's got a touch of the Wicker Man about it in the story, not in form or anything like that, but in terms of a man going somewhere to investigate, but he then gets inveigled into what's going on, right?
So we've got a Howie.
Yeah, it's one of those. And it's kind of, I'll tell you what, it looks terrific. It looks absolutely terrific, this film. And it's really well acted, interesting. Given we're there, it's. I think it's actually. You know what? The version I watched might have been dubbed actually, but if it was really well dubbed. In fact, I know it was. Thinking about it, it was dubbed, but they dubbed it really well, so it doesn't. Sometimes when stuff gets dubbed, it kind of creates a barrier. I find that with an awful lot of Japanese anime dubbing.
Yeah. Although, I mean, I don't want to say that for all. Like, if you watch something like Hellsing, that is, it's supposed to take place in England, but when you're watching it in Japanese, then it feels off. But when you watch it in English and they actually have got the British actors to come in, I feel like that enhances it. But yeah, for Japanese stuff that is supposed to take place in Japan, it's always weird for me to watch that in English,
Yeah, the other one I always get that it's a lot of Italian films. I feel a disassociation because you can tell it's dubbed, and it kind of stops you empathising with the characters. But really, look, it kind of the only thing about this film is it kind of loses its way as it gets towards the end of the second act. It's like this is getting a bit twisty turny now. However, final act, it really delivers. The final few scenes are very, very memorable. I quite liked it overall, and I would give it a 3.5. 3.5.
This sounds like one I need to see too. I always am interested in films that take place in like monasteries or churches.
It was a tight 93 minutes, so it's very in and out, which is nice.
It looks like here in the States it's a Netflix thing. I don't know about over there.
Yeah, I think it was Netflix. I think it was
Netflix UK as well? Okay, yeah. Cool. Yeah, I see the poster.
I don't think they have the
Netflix
same
logo.
Exactly the same films necessarily, but I think in this case they have. Right?
Indeed. Very cool. All right, next up is Hellraiser.
Yeah, the remake. Is it a remake? It's kind of a remake. Yeah, it's a remake, isn't it? It's kind of.
That's also Netflix original, isn't it? Or am I wrong?
Is it? This one, a lot of people didn't like this, but I kind of liked it. It had its problems. What did you think?
I did not care for it too much. Visually, I thought it was kind of cool. I sort of like what they did, with Pinhead and everything. Like, I thought the look of Pinhead was really cool. So I like that part of it. I think I'm pretty much on par with you as far as a lot of the other stuff you're going to say. So I'll let you speak on that. But yeah.
The problem it suffered with it is a lot of the characters were quite unpleasant and unlikable.
Yeah.
Which meant you didn't really care. And when unlikable characters continue talking on screen, it can be a bit tiresome. However, it wasn't that bad. I thought it was very stylish, like you kind of said.
Yeah, the cinematography
looked
well
good.
done.
But I have to say, by the end, I stuck with it, and by the end, I actually did start to feel some empathy with the main character. It took a long time, though. It took most of the running time to get to that point, which really you don't want in a film. You want to establish that rapport fairly early on.
I was going to say, do you think they did that intentionally?
I don't know. I've seen it. It seems to be a tendency. I've seen a lot of modern stuff where they basically put in a load of horrible characters. And there's one like that, which is also a remake, which we will come on to, where there's a similar issue. But I'm trying to think, there was that quite wonderful trilogy they did recently, and I'm trying to remember what it was called. What was it called? Basically, it was set in different time periods, and the date was in the title. But that was marred somewhat by a lot of the characters being really unlikable, and it was set in two towns. One of really... I can't remember. Someone's probably shouting at their podcast.
Yeah, they're probably yelling at us right now. Come on, get it together.
But it was set in two towns. One town was affluent and one wasn't, and you kind of realised there was a reason for that went back right to like the early settlers. But yeah, that suffered from unpleasant characters as well. But yeah, having said that, I still quite liked the film, and I'm glad I stuck with it and quite enjoyed it right to the end.
Yeah, I mean, visually very satisfying. As you say, I was the same on the characters, Mark. I was like, man, like these characters suck. Like I can't, like
they suck. I want them to die.
Exactly,
You're kind of watching it to watch them die,
that's
right?
What I'm rooting for the Cenobites, and I'm not. I feel like I'm not supposed to root for the Cenobites. I want to, like you had. What's her name in the first film? Christy. You want to root for that character to get out alive, but I didn't.
Yeah, but these were just rude, obnoxious people.
I didn't feel like there was
all the way down.
I mean, maybe they're trying to comment on current society. I don't know, but visually, I agree. It looks great. I feel like if you're a Hellraiser fan, it's probably the best one since Hellraiser 2. What do you think?
I'd say I quite like 3 and 4. I know a lot of people don't, but I actually quite like 3 and 4. I'd say it's definitely better than any that came after 4. That's my personal opinion. But I'm totally fine with someone saying, it's the best one since 2. Yeah. 1 and 2 are way better than this. 1 and 2 are definitely better than this.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. Like if you can watch the original 1 and 2, and I mean, but this is something a little bit different. I like I said, I think the character design that they went with really cool, actually. Yeah, I wouldn't mind if they moved forward with that a little bit in the future.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing more. I think they were kind of hinting at it, maybe. That we will see more. So yeah. Sorry, I'm just looking up these films that I've been describing because it's annoying the hell out of me. Fear Street. Fear Street is the series I'm talking about. Fear Street. Okay. Part 1, 2, and 3.
Cool premise.
Part 3 was, and it kind of, I think it went backwards in time. Part 3 was set in 1666, to give you an idea. So.
Oh man, see, I love stuff like that.
Yeah. It's a good series. But one of the problems with it was like everyone was quite unpleasant. It felt like there was no one to latch onto. Yeah, which is a problem. So Hellraiser, what would you give Hellraiser?
I'm going to give Hellraiser, man, I'm going to give it a 2.5. Like I feel like it's worth watching, but it's not going to change your life or anything. But if you really like Hellraiser.
Yeah, I gave it a 3.5, but I think I was over generous. I feel like it's a 3, actually.
Yeah.
I think I was a bit generous that day.
A 3 could definitely be worthy as well. It's certainly not a bad film. No. It didn't. A lot of people were really crazy for this. They were like, "Oh, this is just outstanding." I think maybe I went in expecting too much. I don't know, but again, it's all personal opinion. So, make of that what you will.
Yeah.
But next up, we've got Incantation.
Right, now this one was a found footage film, Taiwanese. Now this gets a lot of rave reviews. Like, it had a really high score on Netflix, so I was expecting a lot. No, didn't work for me. I just wasn't engaged. The acting wasn't good. That was one thing. And that's difficult with found footage. It's like, oh man, I don't know. And unfortunately, it kept jumping timelines. So we were seeing what was happening now, and then we were seeing something that was happening before. And I just felt that the parallel timelines weren't building in any satisfactory way. They just took you out of the last one you were in. Then there'd be another one that's like, oh, I've got to figure out where I'm at now with this. So, whereas if a good thing where you have parallel timelines, it all builds, and you build and build. This did not happen, so it just didn't work for me at all. I don't understand why it's so highly rated, but again, it might be just me. It might be someone watching it with different eyes, or just like, oh yeah, this was pretty good. I didn't think it was good at all. I don't really want to talk about it.
just bad.
Yeah,
okay.
I'll give it a 2. I'll give this one a 2.
Like, I'm summoning my angry video game nerd there.
It was short. It was short. Yeah, it was short.
So it was short. Well, there you go. That's probably a good thing.
Yeah.
All right, moving on. The Invitation.
Right, now this is the other... I mentioned with Hellhole, I thought I'd finished to 50, and then I found 2 more films, and Hellhole was one, and Incantation was another one. This came up on my cable provider as a 22 horror, and it kind of intrigued me, because it said so-and-so from Game of Thrones, so I thought I knew which actress it was, but when I turned it on, it wasn't the actress I thought it was. But I didn't mind, because I quite like that actress too. It's the... it's essentially another one of those where a woman suddenly starts talking to someone she thinks she's related to, because she does one of those DNA, find out where you're from DNA things.
Right.
And she's a bit worried about going to meet this guy, but he's really fun and funny, and not in a flirty way. They're cousins, right? But she's really interested, and she's saying, "Oh," and he's like, "Oh, you're not." She's a mixed race. She's the actress that plays the handmaiden of the Khaleesi, if I remember rightly. She's mixed race, and she's saying, "Oh yes, you're in effect the black sheep of the family because so and so in this family had an affair with the footman who was black." And no one realised that until she had the baby, and it caused a massive scandal. But everyone, this is like a century before. Everyone in the family now wants to meet her and welcome her into the family. And she's American in this, so she goes to England to see what's going on. And she's got a friend she talks to on the internet, and... she talks to her in real life, and then on the internet when she goes to England, who's saying, God, try it, why not? But they're always making jokes about sketchy men and stuff like that. So it feeds into this whole, should I do this or shouldn't I do it, toxic masculinity. But it doesn't go that way.
Oh, okay. Huh.
Not in the way we would expect, though.
Yeah.
Right?
The evil man, that's typically what I think.
Right. So spoilers. There's going to be spoilers for, I'd say, the next 5 minutes, maybe less. But there's going to be spoilers. This will give you a clue, and it gave me a clue as I was watching it, not knowing anything about it. She gets invited to a place where the family are meeting, and it's called New Carfax Abbey. Does that mean anything to you?
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, man. Okay, so now I got to see this one.
And it turns out the Lord of the Manor, who's this young, very charming man, basically is being given patronage. Basically the whole premise is there's a family wedding, and they'd like her to come to meet the family while all the family are gathered. And it turns out there's 3 families involved. One from Whitby. Right?
Oh, nice. Okay.
One from London and one from I can't remember where. But there's 3 families.
Tremendous.
And it turns out there's vampires involved. Yeah, you got it. It's Dracula.
Indeed.
Dracula is the Lord of the Manor.
That's awesome.
And he is kind of... And it's interesting because at one point, before she knows any of this, she's talking to her cousin who's there, who's sort of like welcoming her and introducing her people. She says that the Lord... Okay, it's a family wedding, but the Lord, is he family? And he's like, oh, no, we're not blood related at all. And she's like, oh, that... he goes, why? Why'd you ask? Oh, no reason. She wants to know if she's related to this guy because she kind of fancies him. And he fancies her and so on. And the butler is called Field, but sometimes called Renfield.
Oh, no. Now, is Nicolas Cage in this, Mark?
No. But Sean Pertwee's in it. Sean Pertwee is Renfield. It's kind of interesting. There's some really striking actors and actresses in this, really good. It looks super gothic. It's a lush gothic melodrama. This house is amazing.
Oh, I've got to see this.
What we see is amazing. You will like it. It's a Dracula. But it's high drama and it's melodrama. And essentially... she finally goes to the wedding eve party where the couple are going to be introduced. And it turns out, he's been wooing out and they're a couple now, by the way. And then it turns out he says, it's you and I that are going to get married. She's going, what? And she gets up to leave. But then, blood starts happening and people start feasting. And it's like, my goodness.
Oh, man. Going into Dawn of the Dead. Kind of. Or I'm sorry, from Dusk Till Dawn territory.
No, kind of, not quite that. Basically, one of the maids gets her throat slit, and they all start drinking the blood.
Okay, so it's not all full on chaos.
No, it's not full on chaos like that because they're all involved. That's why. Right. Except for a few of the servants who are then basically the food.
The buffet has arrived.
And she's put at a point where she has to sort of either say yes or no, but I don't want to spoil it too much, so I'll say no more than that. Other than the last act, it turns into an action movie. Unexpectedly, because it was a drama right up until then. Suddenly it all kicks off and it's mad. And it's like, wow, there's a turn I didn't expect from this film. Interesting film. I quite liked it. Yeah, it's a Dracula film, right?
Well, since it's a Dracula film, it's going to automatically go to the top of my list along with Renfield. So, maybe
Renfield was from this year, right? Renfield's from 2023. So
yeah,
The Invitation is, I believe, the only Dracula film from 2022.
Yeah.
But not one on anyone's radar that I knew of.
No.
I did not know about this film at all.
No, I didn't.
So there you go.
This is the first I've heard of it, to be honest. Yeah. And I feel like I keep up with horror pretty well, but maybe not. But I might watch these back to back. Actually, maybe this weekend. Have a Dracula weekend, Mark.
I have to say, I recommend The Invitation over Hellhole. Hellhole was all right, but Invitation. Sorry, you were talking about Renfield, weren't you? I just realised.
Oh yeah, but Invitation. I might check that one out too. Maybe.
Yeah.
But what would you give this, Mark?
3.5.
3.5. Very cool.
Yeah, I think that's a correct score for that. Yeah.
Man, that's hot. That's really high again. So we got a lot of really good films in 2022. Yeah,
we haven't talked about the best yet either.
No, the best is yet to come.
Yes.
All right, next up. We're going back to the Old Testament and with Mad God.
I don't know what we're going to with Mad God. It's a complete. It's basically stop motion animation.
Oh,
and apparently it was in production for 20 odd years.
Oh my God!
And I can't remember the back. I did know all the background. I've forgotten it, but it was in production for 20 odd years. It's basically a project of love.
Wow!
But it's set. It's the maddest stuff you'll see.
Huh.
And I have to say, you have to have a fairly strong stomach and be fairly relaxed about what you see for the first part because it's really graphic and intense and weird. It's stop motion, so it's not real people or anything like that.
Right.
But the imagery is utterly bizarre and weird, and the noises are there's a weird creature, but it's making baby noises, for example. Essentially, it starts with a man in what looks like a deep sea diving outfit being lowered into some sort of descent into some underworld thing, under the world kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then hitting all these mad and weird stuff. To say it could be hell, it's not really clear. It probably is hell.
Right.
But then it appears this guy is possibly... He's carrying something like a bomb, so you think he's there to try and kill something. And then it goes on from there. And I have to say, the first part is hard to get through. It's kind of so intense, but it kind of relaxes a bit and is less graphic as the film goes on. And you're kind of watching it to see what on earth's going on, because it really is mind-bending. This is kind of nightmare fuel, but it's also just mad imagery of a kind you don't often see for such prolonged pieces of film. And I was quite pleased with myself, because I said it's stop motion and there's no actors, but there are actual actors in it.
Oh, wow.
But they are done in stop motion. So occasionally there's human beings, but they are in stop motion too. So they must have filmed them and then converted it into something that looks like stop motion, right?
Yeah, I'm just looking at some images here as we talk, and I mean, it looks really cool. I like it.
It is cool. I really liked it. But I was pleased with myself because I was watching it, and then one of the actors, that's the director, Alex Cox. I'm sure it's Alex Cox, and I looked up. Sure enough, it was Alex Cox.
You got it
and
right.
I know him because he used to present a really good movie show called Movie Drome on the BBC Two,
I love
late
the
at
name.
night on BBC Two, where he'd just show weird and odd films and talk about them at length and intelligently and engagingly for say 10 or 15 minutes before the film started. It was a great series that they used to have on the BBC.
For Americans, almost like kind of a Joe Bob Briggs, but
Yeah.
British, obviously.
Yeah, but
So I would love that.
It wasn't for comedy. It was like just interesting. Oh yeah, this film's this, and the making of this film, this happened, and things like that.
Oh, I love stuff like that.
It was terrific. It was terrific.
Yeah,
it's more documentarian than for comedy. I love Joe Bob. I have to say, I'll qualify that.
Oh yeah, me too. But I appreciate.
Joe Bob does the same, but he does it. He's a much more relaxed, kind of.
Yeah,
thing,
he's gonna sit on his trailer park porch and have a beer while he tells you about.
Yeah, I'm slowly working through Last Drive-In and absolutely loving it. I love Joe Bob.
I have got to catch the new season. I know it's already begun.
I'm still on season 2, I think. It's the one. It's something like Meals from Hell or something. It's like Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Oh yeah, you're early.
Hills Have Eyes, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, good stuff. Good stuff. And
anyway, back to this.
So this is a Shudder
terrific
too,
film.
right?
Oh yeah, Shudder. That's right. It was Shudder. It's like 75 minutes. It's not really long.
No.
And I think that's right for this kind of material. But it's probably worth Googling this and finding a bit of the background. So, because it'll just increase your enjoyment of it because you realise how much effort went into it.
Yeah, I always appreciate the backstory of film. Because, I mean, film is such just the whole process of it is amazing. And then you want to talk about animation and claymation at that. I mean,
it's claymation.
You're getting into some fascinating topics as far as the filmmaking process goes. I enjoy that kind of thing a lot. So, that's cool. So, what would you rate it as far as?
A 4.
Wow. Okay.
Probably it could be a 4.5. I think I made a mental note of it, that saying I got a feeling that the more I rewatch this, the higher the rating will be. That's how I feel about the material. But I've only watched it once, so you can't be sure. But I just feel like it's that kind of trajectory.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Very high praise. And I'm excited to hear it, because I've not, this is under my radar as well. I haven't had Shudder for a little bit, just, because of budget reasons. I have to kind of pick and choose what streaming service I'm going to do each month right now. But it sounds like I need to go ahead and get back on Shudder between this and the Joe Bob Briggs, new season. So very cool. Very cool. Okay. Next up, this sounds like something that would perhaps come from Hong Kong, Mark. It's called Master. But I'm guessing this is not a Chinese...
Not at all. It's an American film. It's basically this lady, she's like a professor or a lecturer, and she becomes master at a certain college. In America, it's like a position, right? But there's like a bit of, she's black, so there's a bit of, they're just being PC, they want to be seen as PC, but really they're white through and through. There's that kind of vibe. A bit like Nope, maybe, or Nope, Get Out, a bit like Get Out. And a few problems with this film, quite liked overall, but ultimately it was a drama rather than a horror. It wasn't scary at all, and there was a horrific thing, but it really wasn't well explained, well formed. The ideas around it weren't formed. It didn't satisfy. It didn't feel like coherent within this universe. So it was like, it felt like I was watching a drama with a horror bit tacked on that didn't really fit. That's how it felt. And it's about this woman. Should I stay here? Am I supporting the patriarchy or, the status quo by doing this, by giving them someone who makes them look better than they are? It's all that kind of business. It was okay.
I guess, again, sort of touching on topics that are relevant, it sounds like, like the premise sounds interesting for sure.
The execution was drama with a bit of horror. That was it, really.
Yeah.
And it wasn't great horror.
Yeah.
And it wasn't well formed,
Yeah, I mean, and I do appreciate good drama, Good drama.
Yeah, but even so, I'll still give this a 3. The filmmaking was good.
Okay, so high rating.
The filmmaking was good. It was just, and the acting was good. It was just, it didn't come together as a horror film.
Yeah, kind of middle of the road, it sounds like.
Yeah.
All right, well, the next one is a big one, and one I really wanted to get to so we could talk about for this, but I just didn't get time to, life. But that one is Megan.
So Megan, it was. I really enjoyed this. This was way better than it had any right to be. Basically, it's the Chucky of this era, right? This little animatronic doll was an absolute nightmare, and it started off like tense and. This doll was doing things. It seemed to know more than it really should have. It was acting more human than it should have. But then it obviously formed a bond with this little girl, and she'd lost her parents, and she formed a bond with it. But it started trying to do things that it really, like someone kind of casually bullies the little girl a bit, but not much. And this doll becomes murderous towards it. But then in the final act, it goes full on mad. And at one point, it does a little dance, and it made me laugh a lot because it reminded me a bit of, I don't know if you've seen it, probably haven't, but the Netflix show Wednesday, the one about Wednesday Addams. There's a bit in that where she does a dance, and it kind of reminded me of Megan, reminded me of that bit. And there's some funny stuff like, there's at one point, she's like walking through corridors. This is like final act, and it's a bit of a spoiler, but not much. It'll make you laugh when you get to it's what she's walking through the corridors, and one of the technicians who knows about this doll, in that there's a toll to be demonstrated to the shareholders, is walking down the corridor and then sees the doll and says, "Shouldn't you be in the lab?" And Megan just pulls out a big paper cut, which looks like a massive machete. It's like, whoa, you're in trouble now, mate. That made me laugh. Yeah, I really enjoyed this. It's better than it has any right to be, really. I really liked it.
Because we talk about, horror films kind of examining modern fears. Boy, what timeliness with the AI stuff,
Mad AI stuff.
Yeah, Google writing its own, or not Google, but Facebook writing its own language.
And I believe the Chucky, most recent Chucky film or films was more about Chucky being an AI doll than a possessed doll. So
I haven't seen
it's got a similar element. I haven't seen it, so I can't comment. But,
I have seen the TV series, and I was not fond of that.
Have you? Okay,
I can't recommend that one, but
okay, all right. But Megan, I'll give it 3.5, but that really doesn't quite illustrate how enjoyable it is. It wasn't a great film. It was a really fun film, though.
Yeah, this is still high up on my to-watch list, and I'm probably going to get to this, in a week or so, I'm sure.
Yeah, you'll enjoy it. Enjoy it.
But yeah, I apologize for not getting to watch it for this, to you, Mark, and to our listeners as well. But it definitely sounds like it's worth watching. Next one up is one I'm also interested in seeing. Again, toxic masculinity, and it's just straight up called Men. I love the title.
Yeah, now this one is, it's not quite, it's more folk horror, really.
Oh, is it? Okay.
But it is also about men. In that this woman had like a toxic experience with her husband, and she's got a way to sort of escape it all, leave it all behind for a bit, It's British. It's British through and through. Rory Kinnear's in it, who is in a lot of things. For example, we saw him in was it Penny Dreadful as the monster? Frankenstein monster.
Oh yeah, he was great in that.
He's great. He's He's in the James Bond films, more recent James Bond films.
Is he?
As like Bill, I can't remember his name now, but basically M's kind of sidekick. And stuff like that. And another Irish actress called Jessie Buckley, who's the woman who's doing this. But she just keeps encountering, basically this Matt, Rory Kinnear, welcomes her. He's very nice and welcoming. But then she's wandering in this village and she keeps seeing people that look like him but are different people. Like a priest who looks quite a lot like him but isn't him. At one point she sees a kid who looks like it. Now that didn't work quite so well. It just looked like they put a man's face on a kid. It didn't look quite great. But there was other things, like she saw this man naked who again looked like him but was a different man. But then she saw him again and he was covered in foliage, like the Green Man of like Celtic legend, and stuff like that. So it had a very strong folk horror vibe tied up with regret and something going wrong. I have to say, I mentioned it when she was in a toxic relationship. It was also ended tragically, and she's like living with an element of guilt around that. And then it kind of goes mad. It's kind of she's possibly mentally disintegrating while this stuff's happening. Though, when she arrives and the strange stuff starts, there's no indication she's got any sort of sanity issues at all, apart from trauma, PTSD around what happened with her and her husband.
Yeah.
But otherwise, she was fine. So you're not quite sure what's going on. And it kind of has a weirdly, I wouldn't say happy ending, but a resolution that suggests it's turned out how it should have turned out. Let's put it that way. And there might even be a weird buried Easter egg in this. There was a scene that reminded me straight out of this extreme 80s horror exploitation film, British horror exploitation film called Extro, about a bad alien. Happened. So I was thinking, is that a reference to that film? That's very odd, but I think it was just probably more a coincidence. I really liked it, but it was kind of interesting. But it's like, again, women having to live with men being stupid or horrible. So it had that theme.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, I just looked this up and I was like, oh yeah, I have seen the trailer for this before. It was a long time ago I saw the trailer for this.
Yeah.
But it looks good. And also I noticed it's from the director of Ex Machina, which is a fabulous film. Outstanding.
I've not seen it, but yes, it is that director. I understand it's a good film though. Again, exploring AI and
yes,
humans,
exactly. So. Fascinating topic right now.
Yeah. So, I actually described it this way, and this only makes sense if you've seen both of these. It feels like Repulsion meets Robin Redbreast. Robin Redbreast is a British TV programme, a one-off play that aired in 1970. So that's quite an obscure reference, but it is part of the new box set. What's it called? A folk horror box set called All the Haunts Be Ours. So some people might have seen Robin Redbreast. Terrific piece of TV, by the way. But it feels like a kind of meeting of those two. So Repulsion is, a woman slowly going insane because she's scared of what's outside and men. So that it's an interesting kind of thing. So I'd give this 3.5, but I'd say it's on the higher end of that.
Yeah, this sounds like another one I need to check out. As I'm always saying on these shows we do them, we're very, very lucky this day and age. We just have so much. We have too much horror to watch, which is great. But man, I really have a hard time keeping up nowadays. Yeah,
I'm not sure exactly where we are on our list, but I feel like we're about halfway through. And you can see the scores. Has only been a few which are 2s or 1.5s. The standard's been very high.
Yeah,
very
I agree. Next up, we have The Menu.
Now, this is nuts. I really like this. Hybrid. I mean, it's a Hollywood mainstream film, I believe, because it stars Ralph Fiennes, Nicholas Hoult, who's most recently in Renfield, and Anna Joy Taylor, who is fantastic in pretty much anything. And it's essentially a weird, mad cooking movie with horror and comedy and thriller elements. Basically, this very, very prestigious cook has invited all these guests who pay a fortune to his own island where he cooks for them with his own staff. But then it turns into we're shutting all the doors and you're going to live through my personal revenge stroke, assuaging my own guilt about things stroke, whatever I think is appropriate for you. And it's kind of bonkers. And
what a
Ralph
concept, man.
It's kind of like, imagine if Hannibal Lecter were a chef.
Oh, God.
And I don't mean that in terms of what he does to people, in terms of his attitude and how he carries himself, right?
He's like an extreme Gordon Ramsay, right?
Yeah. yes, in many respects. And Anna Joy Taylor's clever enough to figure out, how the hell am I going to get out of this? Or maybe she's not. I'm not going to spoil it. She thinks she sees a way through this, because basically people are dying around them. And Nicholas Holt's a fanboy as well.
Oh, wow.
So that's kind of interesting too. Really enjoyed this. I thought I was going to, but it actually executed even better than I was expecting. So I really like this one.
Yeah, this looks high quality. What would you give it score-wise, Mark?
4. It's a straight 4, this one.
Again, very high. Most of these films have been. Let's see. Next up, we have Mr. Harrigan's Phone, which is... We had a lot of phone stuff in 2022, haven't we?
We did Black Phone with Joe Hill. And funny enough, this is a Stephen King adaptation. This is an adaptation from a Stephen King story from one of his later collections. Not one I've actually read.
Yeah,
I have seen this film. Essentially,
Stephen King than I am. But
high quality. This was Netflix, I think.
Oh, okay.
It could have been Shudder. I could have that wrong, but I think it was Netflix. It came out of nowhere for me, this. I just knew it was a Stephen King story and it had horror elements, so I thought, okay. I watched it cold. Now, two of the main characters, played by Donald Sutherland, who's very old at this point, played the old man, and the younger, basically he wants a young person to read to him.
Yes, I have seen the trailer.
And he pays them. Right? The young man is played by the guy that played Bill Denborough in the It remake. It's that actor. It's him. And basically he goes and reads to Mr. Harrigan, and he wants to read all sorts of books and stuff. And then they start getting into conversations. But it's weird. Whenever he wants to give a gift, Mr. Harrigan, he gives people a $2 scratch card. That's what he gives. Christmas, birthdays, that's what he gives. And we see a thing where the boy wants this latest phone, and then he gets the phone, but he also wins one of these scratch cards, which gives him enough money to get another one. And he actually buys it for Mr. Harrigan, who says, well, I don't really need a phone. And then he starts showing him all the smartphone stuff. But one of the things he does is read Mr. Harrigan, like, share prices and stuff like that. And he says, what do I need that for? I've got the Wall Street Journal. He goes, no, this is up to the minute share prices. And he uses it. So that kind of gets the old fella using this phone. And he says there's a very prescient scene where he's talking about the phone after he's had it a few weeks. He says, this phone, he goes, this stuff that's free, it's not free, is it? And he says, well, you're not paying for it. He says, no, this is a gateway drug. This is for people to be able to tell you stuff and you believe it without any filters or editorial. That's what this is, which is, I thought, was a really interesting scene.
Man, talk about timely commentary.
Essentially what happens is the old fella dies, the phone goes in the coffin. This young lad doesn't know what to do, so he, for some reason, decides to put the phone in the coffin with him, have him buried with the phone. But then he starts getting calls. Also, he used to talk to Mr. Harrigan every day about his problems. And Mr. Harrigan sort of gives him advice like, is someone putting you down? You hit them back harder. You do not let them get away with it. That's how you get through things.
So he's like,
and also, we find out he had a nickname. I'm trying to remember what it was. like not pirate, but something like that. Like something to suggest he was an aggressive sort of someone who would not take any trouble from anyone else.
Nice.
And they talk about that. But essentially, the boy also leaves messages on the phone still, even though battery should have died months before, sort of saying, I don't know what to do, I've got this problem. But then things start happening based on what he tells this phone. So it feels like Mr. Harrigan's doing things from beyond the grave. That's the premise.
Right.
Really solid film. I won't go on any more than that. I think I've already spoiled it plenty. But I thought it was excellent. Donald Sutherland's acting is superb in this. Absolutely superb.
Man.
But the acting is good all the way round. And again, it's got a kind of slow gothic drama feel, the whole thing. Quite enjoyed it. Enjoyed it a lot, actually.
Yeah, I mean, it looks really good just from the trailer. And again, very timely with its commentary.
It's a slow burn. Yeah.
Oh, sometimes those slow burns are the best. I think it is like, it's funny because I do know people that like they will not use the smartphone. Like they just refuse. They're like, no, I've got my little flip phone. I'm fine. But I mean, we are
power to them.
Yeah, I mean, we're fed so much information through social media and stuff. So kind of interesting. And then of course, talking from beyond the grave. So I want to see this one for sure. So this is one that I need to kind of put high up. And what was your rating for this, Mark?
4 out of 5.
Again,
yes.
Another really strong rating. So very cool.
Yeah.
All right, moving on. Monstrous.
Yeah, now this one was a bit like the one I talked about with Naomi Watts, Goodnight Mummy, right? It was a mother and a son moved to a town to get away from something that happened. But then this precipitates into some form in a lake nearby that may be imagined, or it may be a precipitation of mental basically, it was a drama.
I gotcha.
It wasn't much of a horror. It was a drama about grief and trauma, and it's set in the 50s.
Yeah.
So, and it's
good setting.
And it's a very thin, lightweight story, and it's quite slow. This could have been done better in half the time, honestly. And I think it's only a 90-minute film. But Christina Ricci is in it, and she's really good. I mean, its moments come from her acting, it has to be said. She's very good in this, but it's not a great film. It's okay at best. It's a drama, in essence, with a bit of horror.
I gotcha. Well, sounds cool. And what would you rate this one?
I give this a 3. I still liked it well
3,
enough.
okay. Well, I mean, that's good enough. That's high.
I'm quite generous, really.
You are. I feel like you're more generous than I am. And then sometimes I feel like I rate things too low. It's funny, again, when we started this show, I feel like I was giving films like, I was being really hard on films, and you guys were being very kind to films. So I don't know. I think I've evened out a little bit my older age now. But next one we've actually talked a good bit about on this show, and that is Morbius.
Morbius. Yeah,
Vampire.
I'd completely forgotten this was a 2022 film, so I didn't actually rewatch it because the first time I watched it, it was a drag. It just doesn't hang together at all, this film.
Yeah.
I read Morbius, or I have read in the past read Morbius, the strip. It's one of the few strips that I felt was my little own domain and most people didn't know about, but then this film came out, so everyone knows about Morbius. However, Morbius is a very violent strip, it has to be said, and the film did reflect that. I thought there were some decent visuals, and there was a few nods to the comic visuals, but Matt Smith was the bad guy. He was good. He was the only really good thing about it, in my opinion. He was very solid. But it just felt like it was dull. It was dull, considering all the action was going on. It was dull. What did you find about it? What do you think?
Well, I mean, I haven't seen it. I've seen the trailer,
Oh, I thought you had. My mistake.
No, we talked about it, I know.
Okay.
But because it's on my to-watch list, and pretty much you're echoing sort of the same thing that I have heard from everybody, and kind of what I got from the trailer, too, even. Now, I have heard people say that it's sort of a nod to a lot of classic horror films. Would you say that's true?
Nah, well,
I don't know.
Some of the tropes of those films, I wouldn't really say that.
Oh, really? Okay.
It didn't really jump, not any more than any other horror film,
That's
be honest.
a shame.
But see for yourself.
I mean, I do want to see
just
it.
missed them.
I actually have it. I just have not watched it. So, again,
It was one of those films that you actively have to try and keep your eyes on the screen because you keep thinking of other things. It was because it was so dull. That was the problem with it. And there was an interesting. I won't mention it because I don't want to spoil it. But there was an interesting cameo at the end where they're obviously trying to tie it into the bigger Marvel universe, which I did not expect. So I don't know if there's a sequel coming out. I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, it's interesting to see how all this is going to tie together copyright wise. And I suspect Morbius does not have another film after the
because Morbius is owned by Sony. Bizarrely.
Exactly.
A bit like Spider-Man was, and there was another Venom. But the Venom films are great. I really like the Venom films.
Yeah.
So it's not a sign it's going to be bad necessarily if Sony own it. But it's because they did the first Spider-Man films. They were great. I think.
Yeah, they still own the
they're
license,
a little underrated.
Actually. Yeah. So, I mean, I expect... I mean, it's weird when you do see Spider-Man in a Marvel film now. It's like he's on loan, It's like from Sony. I don't know when, if ever, Marvel will get that license back because... I mean, that's why they keep making Spider-Man films at Sony. They don't want to lose the license, and I don't blame them, And typically they're good films, so we'll see what happens. But, yeah, I do want to watch Morbius, but... It's a shame it's not better.
Yeah, I mean, I gave it 2, and I think I was being generous, to be honest.
Yeah, it sounds like it. This next one is another one we have both watched, and I've been excited about this one for quite a while when I heard it was coming out. One, because it's directed by Rob Zombie, and because it's from one of my favorite classic television properties, that being The Munsters. And we've talked about The Munsters on the show before. We've reviewed Munsters Go Home, I know for sure.
Yeah, we did. Yeah. Becky didn't like it as much as we did. I remember that. I was quite surprised how she didn't like it. I guess because I'm inured in The Munsters, nostalgia and so on. I just think it's hilarious.
Oh, yeah, I love Munsters Go Home. And
now, we both watched this. So what you have a lead. What did you think of this?
I thought it was good. I didn't think it was great. The comedy it's kind of like the old show. I think that's what they were going for. So the comedy's sort of so-so, kind of hit and miss. I think
it's got that 60s kitsch feel, hasn't it?
It does. Yeah. And I think it's good that they went for that. I think it would have worked better if the film had been in black and white. And I don't know if Netflix, since they were producing the film, I don't know if they just didn't want that or if Rob Zombie didn't want that. I have no clue. But, Munsters Go Home was in color, and I thought it actually did work better for that film. So I don't know. I thought it was okay. The photography was good. The acting, I was actually very surprised with the Herman Munster they got. I thought he was good. I thought
he was solid, yeah.
Yeah, I thought Sherry Moon was good as Lily.
I agree. I think the cast was solid. I think that all of the cast were pretty good.
Yeah, me too.
I'll tell you the bit I liked most though was Lily's first date with, was it Orlok?
Oh yes.
That was Richard Brake. I talked about Richard Brake earlier. Yeah. That was Richard Brake, right?
Really?
I just loved his obsession with his rats. It just made me laugh.
Oh, yeah. It was awesome.
Going on about, I got this rat that does this. And then later on, we see Grandpa reading the paper and it says, look, eaten by horde of rats. That's the front page. It just made me laugh.
Yeah.
An awful lot. And he had the disco vampire thing. That bit was funny. You know what? Of all the films we're going to talk about, I probably would watch The Munsters next again.
I would too. Yeah. It's very rewatchable, much like the Munsters television show.
Yeah, it wasn't as funny as I was hoping it would be because I don't think the editing and the direction fed the comedy as well as it could have. Though I think the actors did a great job. I did enjoy this film a lot.
I did as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and it is the one I'm probably going to watch again most out of all of these, except one or two, I think.
Yeah, it's a very kooky kind of film, which The Munsters was, and it has that. It did capture that feel pretty well, I have to say. I think it shows that Rob Zombie is a fairly versatile director. I think he can do other kind of genres, but again, I think he'll always be tied to horror. I'd say for me this was probably like maybe I'll give this one a 3. I think it's it's good.
That's about right. Now I realise we're like 2 hours in, and we're still kind of only halfway through.
Yeah, I probably go a little bit faster than some of these. I apologize.
Yeah, so I might speed up some of these.
Yeah.
We'll concentrate more on the ones that are worth talking about, or the ones we both watched, right?
Yeah, we saw some big ones. But
I'll rattle through some of these as best I can.
All right.
So Nanny is the next one. Yes. Nanny. Now this was a drama about a sort of possibly illegal immigrant, but I'm not entirely sure, being a nanny in America, and but it really wasn't a horror film. It really wasn't. It had some tiny horror elements, but again, it was more about regret and dealing with a situation or an environment that you're not used to, dealing with people you don't on the same cultural I don't want to say level, because that suggests one's lower than the other. The same cultural grouping.
Yeah, that's a good way to word it. Yeah, wavelength, I was going to say. But
wavelength.
Every culture is so different, and actually, I mean, I can understand, like, it'd be like if I, went over to England, or you came over to the U.S., a little bit different culture-wise, and then if you come from somewhere like South America.
She was from Africa. This nanny was from Africa. So
wow!
Yeah, but it's ultimately a drama about trauma, much like the one I talked about with Christina Ricci, Monstrous. So there was kind of a thematic similarity between the two films. It was okay, and I'd give it a 3.
Cool.
Let's move on to the next one, because we have both seen this.
Yep.
Nope.
Oh, what? Okay, I loved this one.
Yeah, I think you liked it more than me, and I think most people liked it more than me. I thought it was okay. I mentally compare Jordan Peele films to Get Out, which was a great film, and they always feel a bit lacking compared to Get Out to me.
Get Out,
but that's my problem, right? That's my problem.
I thought Get Out was great. Believe it or not, though, I actually like this more than Get Out.
A lot of people do, and I think I might have missed. I've got to rewatch this. I think I need to give it a second chance. I still liked it, but I felt like some of the elements didn't quite feed into the story. Thematically, it all fed, but in terms of story and plot, I'm not quite sure how certain things fed into it as much. I think maybe I was a bit tired when I watched it as well, so that might affect my judgment somewhat. But it looked great, and the acting was great, and I kind of liked some of the points they made about sort of Hollywood and how it sidelined black actors somewhat, or sort of the presence of black people somewhat. But that wasn't preachy. It wasn't preachy at all about that kind of.
I mean,
but there was
just stating facts, honestly. I mean, gosh, the way black actors were portrayed, in early Hollywood, really not cool. That's all I can say on it, and really, really shameful. And
the situation didn't really improve until probably the 60s onwards.
Somewhat, yeah. And I mean, it's gotten better. You do finally see African Americans represented more on television. I still don't feel like it's equal.
Oh no,
but it's better, and I'm glad there's a film like Nope that is not. No, in my opinion, Nope is not just a black film. This is a film that appeals to everyone. It takes a deeper look at American culture, and I'll just go ahead and spoil one thing. So if you haven't seen this, maybe skip ahead like 3 to 5 minutes. But it looks a lot at UFO culture in America, and that doesn't just relate to white people. That relates to black people too, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, I love the guy that was the director, or an ex-director who they got involved in trying to figure out what was going on. He cracked me up too. The guy that was definitely. I need to rewatch this. I feel that Jordan Peele doesn't make films for black people. I think he makes films for everyone.
I think so too.
He's just got an interesting perspective on the black experience that
Yeah, Twilight
You know,
Zone,
any kind of education of across cultures helps.
Yeah,
because
yeah.
you get to realise, okay, people act different ways, but ultimately, good people are good, and you know what I mean.
Yeah.
People are people.
Oh yeah, you've got good and bad people in every culture.
Yeah,
It doesn't matter where, and that is just a truth that I think.
Yeah, basically, learning about other people makes them less scary.
It does.
Or intimidating, or other. You know.
Yeah.
That's a good thing. That's a good thing.
I like the beginning of the film where our lead character. I'm totally blanking on his name, but he. He's like standing with the horse, and they're about to shoot this commercial, and they really examine like his kind of anxiety around sort of all these white people just standing around, and I mean I can understand that anxiety, even though I'm not African American, obviously, but but I get it as a person who has anxiety and panic attacks. I'm like, it has to be rough. I feel like if you're a black person in the United States, you're just surrounded by a lot of white people, and you're like, okay, I'm just the only one here. So I feel like it's good. It explores these issues, and it explores a lot more with the kind of UFO, which I did not see coming in the trailer.
No, it's not.
I love the part where he's in the barn, like he just peeks out and sees it like behind the cloud. He turns around and he goes, "Nope."
Nope.
It's perfect. It just nails it. So I mean, I think I'm pretty in love with this film, Mark. I think
okay. You do like it more than me, yeah.
But man, I'll just go ahead and say, I mean, I'm gonna give it a 5.
5?
Yeah,
wow.
I think
I give it a 3.5, but I'd say on the higher side, but I feel like I was being mean there. I just want to restate again, we're two white dudes talking about this, and talking about stuff we really don't know about.
Yeah, we don't.
Apologies to anyone listening.
Exactly.
To
any African Americans, to any Black Americans, just to say, hey, I apologize in advance. I don't
trying to represent you.
Yeah, I cannot represent you or your struggle. But
No.
I understand is all I can say. I understand a little bit. Let me just say that.
Yeah.
So, but this film is great. Much like Get Out, at examining that and other elements of, like I say, the UFO culture. I think, and the stuff with the UFO is. There's a bit of a twist to it that I won't give away, that I just thought was so cool, just really well done. And I didn't see it coming. So I liked it a lot, man. And I'm sorry it didn't gel for you as much. But again, we have different perspectives, which is cool. And I would be interested to hear kind of what some of our listeners think about it as well. If it worked for you, if it didn't work, because maybe it is kind of a film that divides audiences, which.
I don't think it is, because I am aware the praise is much higher. You're almost universal for it. It's much higher than my rating. I'm aware of that. So, I feel like I missed something. Maybe I was tired or something. But usually I pay quite decent attention to what I'm watching. So, I don't know.
Yeah,
there was something about it there was elements that didn't quite feed it for me, but I need to rewatch it to be sure.
Well, yeah, I think that's fair, and I can understand that perspective as well. I really wish I had seen this in the theater.
I think I do too, actually.
I wanted to, and I tried, but just with everything going on with my crazy personal life, I won't go into that, but I just didn't get to the theater. So I regret that, but that's okay. I mean, it was nice on the big small screen. So
Now the next one we're going to talk about is Orphan First Kill. The sequel to Orphan, and again, my crazy OCD. I watched Orphan as well, so I had some perspective again.
Oh wow!
So I watched the first film, and I watched this one. This one was absolutely bonkers. The first one is kind of mad anyway, but the second one was even madder. I enjoyed it. It was ridiculous, but I really enjoyed this quite a lot, and it was silly in a way. Megan is kind of bonkers and silly. Really enjoyed this. I'm not going to say too much about it because honestly, it's anything you say will spoil it, and You're best to go into this completely cold, other than seeing the first film. Avoid anything you can about this before you see it. I give it 3.5. Really liked it.
Oh, very high rating. Wow. Orphan is one I've wanted to see, and so I'd have to go back and watch the first one too. But man, I admire
again,
you.
the first one's kind of bonkers, but man,
this one's even more
next level.
I admire your dedication, Mark.
Yeah. Right, the next film, we're going to jump around here. Yeah. This one's Pearl, but actually, there was a prequel. This is the prequel to a film that was also made in 2022. Indeed. So I think we should actually jump to that film before we talk about Pearl. And that film is called X.
Indeed.
X.
Indeed. It's funny, there's an anime movie called X, so I instantly think of that, but now I will certainly think of X, I believe, for this film, which takes place also in the 70s and also examines not call girls, but pornography, so kind of sex in America, which is a fascinating subject to me. Man, what a film!
It doesn't really. It doesn't really examine pornography. Pornography is what it hangs on. But it is basically young couples who are forward-thinking, making these movies, but going into Texas where it's slightly more conservative.
In the 70s, man.
they're basically renting a room, as it almost. Or, locations from this elderly couple, and the man obviously doesn't like them.
I mean, just back then in the 1970s, for those who are not American, let me just say, the girl has her boyfriend is a black guy, African American, and in the 70s, man, that was unheard of almost, especially in Texas, in the southern United States. So I thought that was a very interesting element. I thought that was cool, but boy, you can tell the old man has a problem with it, can't you, Mark?
Yeah, definitely. It's interesting, but this is essentially borrowing heavily on the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And there's quite a good borrowing. I really liked it. Also, bits of it reminded me of Eaten Alive. The old lady. The wife, the old lady, who is Pearl,
indeed,
who we're going to talk about a bit. She's quite amazing, and that actress plays two characters in this film. She plays one of the younger women who is the main actress in the pornography, in fact, and this old lady who kind of something awakens in her when she kind of sneakily watches what's going on, and she kind of wants to start making love with her husband, but her husband saying, my heart's not up to it, I can't. And she said, and I have to laugh because I watched this with my daughter and Pearl with my daughter.
Oh, man.
And because we're fairly relaxed. And she's over 20, and now occasionally we quote to each other, tell me I'm special, Howard. And she's amazing. We do that for X. So X is a lot of fun. X, what would you rate X?
Oh, wow. I liked X a lot. I would give X a 4.5. Very close to 5.
Wow, really high.
Really high. Really liked it a lot.
I give it a 3.5. I think it was derivative, but in a good way. It was fun. It didn't feel like, it's just rehashing stuff. They did it it looked really good. They got some sort of feel. Ty West got some sort of filters on this that made it look like 70s film stock. It was quite amazing.
I really like how they made it look kind of like old 70s film. Like you could believe that this was filmed almost in that like Texas Chainsaw Massacre era. Which I really appreciate, kind of a, what did they call them? I'm blanking on the name, but low grade film basically.
Exploitation film?
Yes, exploitation.
16mm? Yeah.
Exactly, 16mm. Thank you, Mark.
So the follow-up to this, the prequel, about the old lady when she was a young lady, set around World War One, was called Pearl. Did you got to see this, right? You saw
I did,
this,
yes. Absolutely loved this as well. Actually, I think Pearl may be better than X.
Yeah, Pearl is better than X, in my opinion, definitely. I've never seen anything like this. He got something right in these digital filters that made it look like a 50s Technicolor movie.
Yeah, it's
through and through.
crazy. Beautiful
I have
cinematography.
not seen a film look like this in years. I have to say.
Yeah.
It reminded me of like David Lean films from the 60s. It reminded me of like Douglas Sirk very strongly. Rebel Without a Cause, stuff like that.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It reminded me a bit of the Powell and Pressburger kind of stuff, the way it looked. And Mia Goth.
Oh my God!
Should have been in Oscar contention for this.
I agree, man. She blows it out of the park. Knocks it out of the park.
Absolutely brilliant performance. This is a film to see. This is the best horror film of 2022, in my opinion. And I didn't expect to be saying that. I basically pretty much knew what was the best 2020 before I even started this. I just said nothing's going to beat this, but for me personally. But Pearl did.
It's like a three-way tie for me with three films, and Pearl is one of them. Indeed.
Right.
I totally agree with you, Mark. What would you give this ratings-wise?
Well, I gave it 4.5, but now I'm talking about it's a 5.
Yeah.
This is a 5.
5 for me as well, man. I agree.
Yeah, I just can't think. This is definitely the best film I've seen since... I was going to say The Lighthouse, but there is a better film than that I saw just before that. Mandy. This was a terrific film. Pearl was really good. Really liked it.
Love the acting.
It's a drama with horror elements which precipitate much closer to the end. There's a little at the beginning, but basically it's a drama. But it's so well acted, so well written. Looks amazing.
Yeah.
There's even elements, I feel, of like The Wizard of Oz in it, in some ways.
Yeah, she definitely has a Dorothy vibe going.
Yeah, and she is terrific. She kind of reminds me of a young... the lady that was in The Shining. I'm going to kick myself for this. Shelley Duvall.
Yeah, Shelley Duvall, absolutely.
She's got a touch of that about her, but her performance, she does a monologue at the end, which is absolutely amazing.
Yeah, one of the best. I'm guessing, it looked like it was all one take. And if
it did.
My God, man. There are just very few actors who can do that. Like Vincent Price, I think of one scene with him. I can't think of the movie right off, but like very few actors can do monologues like that. That just like, you just want to get up and like clap after it's done. Like my God, what a performance! Mia Goth nails it, and
she's absolutely terrific in Pearl.
Man,
she was pretty good in X, but in Pearl, you just see how good she is. There's very few performances where someone can hold the screen like this. I'm thinking things like The Passion of Joan of Arc from the 20s.
Oh, wow.
Bob Hoskins in Long Good Friday, perhaps. Maybe Michael Caine in a few films.
Yeah.
But she is just amazing.
I agree.
She's just amazing. Anyway, Pearl is the one to watch.
Absolutely, man. I couldn't agree more with you, Mark, and I can't say enough good things about Pearl. I think at some point we will probably dedicate an episode probably to X and Pearl at some point in the future.
Yeah, I think so.
It's worth talking about more. But we should move on for time's sake. Yeah.
Yeah. So the next film I'll breeze through, it's I think a Spanish film called Piggy. It was pretty decent. It's basically one of those ones, teenagers bullying a girl because she's overweight and she's kind of living with this, but it then ties into a serial killer thing going on in this town.
Oh.
But she kind of knows more than the rest of the town, but she decides not to tell for various reasons. Now, one of the problems with the film is some of the character moments and character motivation seem quite odd and like, why would they do that? But as overall, as a horror thriller, I quite liked it, and I'd give it 3.5.
Ah, very high. Very cool. Mm-hmm. Did you feel it was kind of Twin Peaks-like?
No.
Okay.
No, it was fairly conventional.
I'm just thinking the small town kind of thing,
No, like I say, it was Spanish language.
Gotcha.
And she was just, no. Okay. No, I wouldn't say it was that. It was odd, though.
Very cool. Moving on, one we both we dedicated an episode to, so check that out. Prey, we both like this a lot.
Yeah. We don't. I don't think we need to talk about that.
Yeah,
the only thing I'll say is this was the film I thought was going to end up as my favourite of the year because I was convinced nothing would top it, but Pearl does.
Yeah,
this is my second favourite of the year.
Same for me. Amazing film. Really. I mean, the Alien the Predator franchise has gone off in some strange directions since the second one. Some films are certainly better than others, but this film is really solid.
Yeah, this is the best one since Predator 2 by far.
I agree with you.
Though I kind of got a soft spot for Alien versus Predator. I quite like that. But
I do too.
I feel like quality-wise, Predator 2, Prey are the top tier ones.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we talk about that too in our Prey episodes. So, again, make sure to check that one out if you want to go back in our archive. And let us know what you think. What order would you put the Prey, or I'm sorry, the Predator? What order would you put the Predator franchise in? Let us know. Moving on, the Requin, right?
The Requin. I'm not sure even how it's pronounced because they don't use the title in the film, really. It's a shark thriller. It's a couple who have had a traumatic event, go off on holiday, but somehow their house, which was moored to the coast, has become detached, so they're floating in the ocean, and then a shark starts having a go. Yeah, it's goofy. It was okay. I'll give it a 2.5. I don't really want to say more than that. It was, I mean, shark films, they've got to be really crazy like Deep Blue Sea before you can forget about Jaws.
Exactly. I mean,
Jaws kind of broke the mold on it, and that's it, right?
Yeah, there's really, I don't think, there's no better kind of short film.
They've got to go goofy. They've got to be like The Meg or Deep Blue Sea to be get anything out of them. Otherwise, they're just subpar versions of Jaws, right?
Yeah, they're sci-fi originals, man, and there are so many sci-fi original bad shark movies. They're all over the place. So it sounds like this is another to add to that list if you're big on that genre. Next up, we have Resurrection.
Yeah, this was basically a psychodrama. Toxic masculinity. A woman and her daughter have made a new life in New York, I think it is, when suddenly an old partner who thinks he has mental control over her turns up, and she keeps insisting he doesn't, but he clearly does. Because she starts acting crazier and crazier when he's around and stuff like that. So this kind of precipitates. And it becomes a bit body horror as well, in the way the Hatching did. It was all right. It really well acted. Tim Roth's in it. Rebecca Hall's in it. Both excellent acting. There was nothing wrong with this film at all. I just don't particularly want to talk about it much anyway. But I gave it a 3.5.
Okay, so yeah.
It's an odd film. It's an odd film, but well acted and basically a psychodrama with a touch of horror, Cronenbergian horror, let's put it that way.
Gotcha. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, moving on, one that has had a lot of talk, and I have not checked it out. It is on my list, but after hearing you talk about it, I'm not quite sure, and that is Skinamarink, kind of like Skinamarink.
Yeah, it wasn't my cup of tea at all, and I appreciate it. This might be one of those ones, someone might hold it as like the best film they've ever seen, or 5 out of 5. Fair enough.
I'm skeptical with what I've read about it, but I appreciate the idea and the process. So yeah, if you would tell us.
It's a little aggravating because basically you feel like you're watching something where the interesting stuff is happening just out of shot, and the whole film's like that, and it's kind of playing on sound and stuff like that. And I've said, is this the world's first movie that relies entirely on ASMR? Because it feels like that. It's not for me. This is not a thing for me. It felt like it reminded me a bit of a Eraserhead, and I love Eraserhead, but like the worst aspects of Eraserhead. It was like almost like a massive teaser of a film rather than a film in its own right. I didn't particularly like it, but I appreciate what was in it, and I gave it a 2 because I could see it was achieving what they intended it to achieve, which is always worth a point, some score. But what they were trying to achieve was not something I want to see. So, yeah.
Makes sense. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. This is on my list, but it's like low down mark, so I don't know if I'm gonna
No,
get
I
to
wouldn't
this one
bother.
anytime
I wouldn't
soon.
bother.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's just so many
it was
other
short.
things.
It was short, I believe.
But if it worked for people, I think that's great too. And I appreciate that the filmmakers were able to achieve success with a very low budget, which that's always cool.
Yeah.
So moving on, Sissy.
Yeah, this was a comedy horror comma, and it reminded me very much of Bodies. Like younger people in a house, something bad happens, things precipitate in a comedy way. It was also it was a bit of bullying. How bullying has played into the interactions going on in the past, because they were all women that grew up, went to the same school, meeting up again. But Sissy, who's the main character, one of the characters there used to bully her, So it's dealing with that, and then an accident happens and it precipitates paranoia and sort of issues. It reminded me a lot of Bodies. I liked it, though. I liked it. It was a pretty decent film. I think it was an Australian film.
Oh, fascinating.
Pretty fun.
Always good to see things from our friends down under.
Yeah.
I actually want to watch more Aussie films. I just hear that, there's a lot of great films from, I think, the 60s and 70s. And, of course, you have Mad Max, so that's the standard,
Mad
right?
Max, Peter Jackson. He's New Zealand, but, close.
Yeah, close. Very close. Distant cousins, perhaps.
Yeah.
All right. And you said the rating for Sissy already.
3.5.
Okay, just wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
In case I did not hear. Moving on, we got, I like this, slash back with a slash in the middle.
Flashback. Yeah. This was okay. It was an alien invasion movie. It was basically Attack the Block, but instead of London boys, it was Inuit girls. But unfortunately, they weren't great actresses. The direction wasn't great. The script wasn't great. It had a bit of attitude, so it wasn't entirely worthless. But it was basically Attack the Block kind of thing.
I gotcha.
I'll give it a 2.5.
2.5. So not, yeah. So there's something there, but not much.
Yeah, there's something.
All right. Slayers, one you have mentioned to me that I also wanted to get to, but just, man, I couldn't do it with everything going on. So what did you make of this one?
Right, so this was a vampire hunter kind of thing, and vampires. So that was kind of cool. Thomas Jane, who was a great Punisher in a bad Punisher movie. I always liked Thomas Jane. He was in Deep Blue Sea as well, funny enough. Playing this old grizzled one who's kind of narrating. He's the narrator as well as in it about what's going on with these vampires, and these vampires are sort of setting up victims for various nefarious reasons. And he's also getting involved. So it's kind of actiony, kind of comedy. Really fun film. Really enjoyed it. And I'd give it a 3.5.
Very cool. Yep, another one I want to check out. If it's a vampire film, I'm probably going to watch it. I've watched some terrible vampire films, let me tell you. But I'll always give it a chance if it's a vampire. Even after what Twilight has done, still my favorite monster. But anyway, that's my rant for the show. Moving on, Smile, which I want to see this as well, man. The trailer is so good. I would at least say this is probably the best trailer of 2022. What do you think?
Yeah, I haven't seen the trailer. I've seen the film, though.
There you go.
Pretty decent film. Playing on something we've seen a lot before, which is like a curse.
Right.
It reminded me of It Follows and The Grudge and that sort of thing. Basically, a thing being transmitted on that is a curse, right?
Right.
Very effective. I really like this. I've given it a score that I think was a little low, actually. But yeah, I liked it quite a lot. But it did remind me an awful lot of other horror films I've seen.
I gotcha. I haven't seen this one, but the trailer, it looks well made. That's all I can say for it, really, having not seen it. What do you think about the score-wise? What did you give it?
Well, I gave it 3.5, but I'd say it's on the higher side. It's not quite a 4, but it's close.
Okay.
It's pretty decent.
So closer to 4, you would say, but...
get in there.
Maybe. I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Closer to 4 than 3, that's for sure.
Gotcha. Okay, very cool. This is one I'm interested in seeing at some point. Again, there's too much good horror. In 2022, what a year, man.
Yeah.
So moving on, Soft and Quiet.
Yeah, this one isn't really horror. It is intense thriller, but I still included it, right? Essentially, it's a group of ladies who turns out are racists, quite through and through racists, who are working themselves up into a palaver. And it almost feels like it's real time in that we see them getting angrier and angrier and working against each other to build up their hatred. And basically come across a couple of Mexican ladies who just want to buy a bottle of wine. And they start, and it gets antagonistic, and the one feels like, well, we're not going to put up with this. And then once horrible events happen, they start acting like they're the victims. And it's just really angering to see something like this. So it's quite an effective film in that sense, but it was kind of angering as well. You know, this could be triggering for some people.
Yeah, I can see that.
But it was a pretty decent film in that it delivered what I believe the filmmaker was intending, which is showing you entitled, horrible people being entitled horrible people.
Yeah.
And what happens when they're allowed to be that way. And it's interesting that women were the focus of this, because usually this sort of thing tends to be masculine.
Yeah.
But it was kind of interesting, yeah.
It
was an interesting one.
Kind of a cool turn.
Like I say, it isn't horror, but it's... Well, no, what happens is horrible.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
Would you say like kind of a Hitchcock thriller vibe at all? Or
no, I'd say the nearest is probably like Green Room. You're seeing people caught up in something. We're seeing the bad guys caught up in like a mob mentality kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then some of them realising they shouldn't be doing this, and some of them being even more reckless, and some of them realising don't do that because that'll get us caught. You know, and then those sorts of arguments and stuff like that.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I'd give it a 3.5.
Okay, so it's pretty solid.
But, again, none of the characters, apart from the women who are the victims of these two, are sympathetic in any way.
Gotcha.
Yeah. The next one... I'll give this 3.5. The next one I did not like. It was called Something in the Dirt. And it was... Have you ever seen the film Pi?
I have not, but I have heard of it. I mean, I know of it. So.
It felt like it was almost remaking Pi with a pair of millennial characters played for laughs, but it wasn't funny, though the dialogue sounded like... The way it was delivered sounded like it should be funny. That's the only way it wasn't for me. Now, it was weird this, because I was expecting this to be better, because it's the guys that actually made Spring, the one I talked about earlier from 2014 that I really liked. Made by those guys. So I was expecting a lot from this, but really didn't work for me at all. And I think maybe I just wasn't on the right wavelength with it. I gave it a 1.5. I just didn't find it that good at all.
It's just not well done.
No.
All right.
Right, well, we're getting to the back end now.
We are.
Yeses.
We're getting
good,
there.
Right?
All right, and next up is Speak No Evil.
Yeah, this was quite affecting, this film. I saw it fairly recently. It was admirable, but it was entirely unsettling. It was basically almost like one of them home invasion movies where you're just thinking, what are these people going to do next?
Oh.
But they kind of turned it around in that it was basically a Danish couple. Now, this is mostly in English language, but basically a Danish couple are on holiday and they meet a Dutch couple who invite them to come stay. And, like, things get mentioned, like the guy says, oh, yeah, I work for Médecins Sans Frontières. And they said, oh, you're a doctor, yeah, all this. And they get invited to go stay with them. So this Danish couple with their daughter go stay, and essentially this other couple just get worse and worse in their behaviour and what they say and what they do.
Oh, no.
And this other Danish couple are kind of confused about what to do. They don't want to be rude.
Right.
They're well-mannered, but they don't know what to do. But they're kind of having their buttons pressed.
It's like, how do we get out of this?
They can leave at any point, but they choose not to. And at one point, they do decide to leave, but they go back again.
Oh.
and get talked around and sort of, oh, I'm really sorry if you should have said about this. Like, for example, the woman mentions she's vegetarian, but they keep kind of making meat, right? And things like that. Stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's just really horrible people.
Yeah.
I think this is pretty terrific. It's clear it's doing exactly what the filmmaker wants it to do. It's affecting. It's kind of upsetting to watch. It's like angering to watch how these people are putting up with this horrible behaviour. And you're angry at their horrible behaviour, but you're also angry at them for putting up with it.
You're like, man, just go.
Yeah, it's really quite an effective film. Speak no evil.
I think
it's mostly in English. There's a little subtitle with where they go talk Danish or Dutch,
oh, cool,
depending on who's in the scene. But mostly it's in English. And it's interesting to see characters whose English is their second language interacting, and they're from two different countries. You know,
yeah.
So there's that cultural divide for them too. So like the Danes is like, is this okay in Holland but not in Denmark? You know, it's all that kind of thing. Yeah, I give this a 4 out of 5. Very good.
Oh, awesome. Yeah. I got to check this one out too. This sounds really cool. I like a lot of foreign language films, but it is interesting when you see two different cultures kind of interacting, and because you do want to be respectful of that culture, but at the same time, everyone has their limits. So it sounds interesting. Our next one is one that I wanted to get to as well, but man, again, life, and that is Studio 666. You've told me a little bit about this, Mark.
This is a goofy comedy horror, which features the Foo Fighters, really.
Which is awesome.
And Dave Grohl's in it. Dave Grohl's the main character
how awesome
in this movie. And he does all right. I really like this. There's not really much to say about it. You got to see it for yourself.
Yeah.
Dave Grohl is like demons and shit and things like that. So, it was a fun film. I'll give it a 3,
Very cool. Yeah, this is on my to-watch list as well. Sounds like just a fun little film. So moving on, just because we're short on time here, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and this is, I believe, is the Netflix version. What a lot of people are referring to as TCM Netflix, right?
Okay, and a lot of people didn't like this, right? I thought it was all right.
Yeah,
I kind of thought it was good fun.
Oh, okay. That's good to hear.
It does suffer a bit from unlikable characters, but then if you think about it, the original is a bit like that, right?
That is true.
So,
yeah,
fair enough. I thought it was decent. I thought it was short, it was punchy, it was decent. It kind of was a direct sequel to the first movie. Because it's set in that time. It was all right. Yeah, I quite like this.
I mean,
I thought it was okay.
You're not the only one who likes it, though. I've kind of heard things from both sides. But I have actually had a friend of mine tell me, "Don't bother," straight on.
Yeah.
So I'm getting a lot of different points of view on this one, which makes me feel like, okay, I should probably at some point just check this one out for myself, and But yeah, I'm glad to hear you say that because our tastes are
I liked it better than better than some of the other Texas Chainsaw. I liked it better than say Leatherface. I think.
Yeah.
But it's been a while since I've seen that, so I can't be absolutely sure.
Right.
But yeah, it was all right. I give it 3.
Okay.
I'll give it 3.
Yeah, not bad. All right. One we have talked about very recently. In fact, I believe that was our last show. We talked about Terrifier 2, which came out in 2020.
Yeah, we don't need to talk about.
We don't. Yeah, check out that episode.
Yeah.
Do you just want to talk about what you gave that, Mark?
I gave it 2.5 because it was way too long and too gratuitous. I preferred the first film. I did like the pale little girl in this one. That was the best element. And there were some dream elements that were quite good, but they just went on way too long.
Yeah, I do agree they went on too long, but I'm a little higher on this one than you are. I think, there's a lot of elements I like, but I also think the film... I mean, I'm not for censorship. Again, the filmmakers should do whatever they want. This is just me personally. I think it's a little overly gross for no reason. It revels in the gore and violence, man. And if you're a gore hound, you will love it. It's just not for me. I like gore. I would say I'm a gore hound, but maybe not this much of a gore hound. So again, personal preference, really. But I would still give it a 4 out of 5. I think it's very well made. I really love the final girl, and I'm totally blanking on her name. But again, see our previous episode. We've talked about all this.
Yeah, she was good. She was good.
Yeah. So for you, 2.5 on this, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And Troll, one we've both seen. I like this one. What was it? It's
Norwegian. Norwegian.
There you go.
Basically, Trolls exist. It's kind of in the same, almost the same universe as Troll Hunter, in that trolls exist and they have been under the. It's basically a kaiju movie,
yes,
but Norwegian trolls instead of, prehistoric giant lizard dragon things.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah,
that's what it is.
I think this is the first Norwegian film I've ever seen. How about for you?
Now, I've seen Troll Hunter.
Oh, yeah,
for example,
that is Norwegian.
And I've seen some other really good Norwegian films. There's one called Headhunters I saw recently that was really good.
Oh, okay.
I'm pretty sure that was Norwegian. Cool. I really like this. It was basically King Kong.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I like it a lot.
King Kong. Or Godzilla, one or the other. You take your pick, right?
Yeah.
So this giant troll was like storming around the countryside and they were trying to figure out how to attack it, but they figured the tools they had were actually not working or making it more powerful. Whatever it was, it was fun. It was a fun film.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it is a fairly forgettable kaiju film, but there again, I mean, I don't want to say it's forgettable. It's just that I've recently, I saw, and I know you probably have too, is Dracula. Edit that out. I've recently seen the Godzilla versus Kong film. And so I think that kind of sticks in my mind as like the standard now. But if you like kaiju, this is very much worth watching.
It's a kaiju film through and through. Yeah.
And I'd watch it
Norwegian.
Again. Excellent. Yeah, exactly.
What would you give it? What score would you give it?
I think I'm right with you on this one. 3.5.
3.5.
Yeah, really, really good. And I'll watch it again at some point.
So we're now through the to use now. We're for to use. Right, so this one, there's only one under you. Unhuman. This was kids on a bus and then a zombie apocalypse starts. That's kind of it. It was fun, but the basic premise, when you finally get revealed what's actually going on, is really stupid. Really stupid.
Oh.
So that kind of okay, but it was kind of fun. The acting was decent. The dialogue was snappy and fun. It looked good. I don't mind a zombie film, so that's all right. Yeah, it was okay. I'd give it a 3 out of 5.
Fair enough. Very cool. Next one is one we both seen, and that is Violent Night. And man, I love this one. We talked about Santa's Sleigh earlier in the year. We had an episode on that, and I really. I think that sort of led into us watching Violent Night, which probably made me like it even a little bit more.
I will cover this next Christmas for sure.
Yeah,
properly. But yeah, it's essentially Santa's Sleigh, but better acted, on steroids, more crazy. Yes. I mean, they riff on Die Hard. There's a direct reference to Die Hard 2.
Yes.
Or homage in Die Hard 2. And Home Alone as well, funny enough.
I loved it, man. Oh, yeah, because Home Alone is like my favorite Christmas film, which I know is crazy. Yeah. But, I grew up with it, so just awesome all around. I
watch it every year. Both Home Alone and Home Alone 2.
Yeah. I will add this to my holiday horror rotation.
Yeah, it's definitely going in mine. It's up there with recent ones are like Krampus and stuff like that. But Violent Night is solid, yeah. What would you give this?
Oh, man. I'm almost at a 5 for this. I would say like a very high 4.
I'll give it 3.5. I like David Harbour in it. He was very good as the Mad Santa.
I thought so too.
It was so similar to Santa's Sleigh, though, wasn't it?
Oh, man, it was. It really was.
Just a better version.
Bigger budget. Yeah. Very cool. Let's see. Okay, so we talked about X already.
X we've already covered, indeed. So we're on the very last movie of this whole A to Z, and it's not a Z, unfortunately. It's a Y.
It is.
It's called You Won't Be Alone. This really caught me by surprise. Paul caught me by surprise, but this also. This is called You Won't Be Alone. It's a Macedonian film, and it's the only Macedonian film I've ever seen.
Fascinating.
I believe. It's essentially an art house film, but it has heart, meaning. It evoked Ingmar Bergman for me and some Jodorowsky. It's essentially, let me try and describe the story. I don't think this is particularly spoilery. It's because it's seeing it is what you need to do. The story's kind of almost secondary. Essentially, a young girl, basically a witch tries to kidnap. This is like medieval, I think, in Macedonia. A witch, an old burnt up, scarred old witch, tries to take a baby, but the mother manages to persuade her to let the girl live until she's 16, then she'll become property of the witch. But then the mother immediately hides the baby away somewhere the witch can't find it, in like this cave system, or it might be a holy place. So the girl grows up without experience anything of life. She just lives in this cave. But then the witch gets the mother, the girl gets out of the cave, and the witch immediately says, "You're mine," and makes her a witch by it. I won't go into it, but makes her a witch. Now, being a witch means she has the ability to shapeshift. So essentially what we then get is a journey of this girl who has no experience of life, but being able to shapeshift and become other people or dogs or anything and start experiencing life. And it's kind of a journey through the countryside, living these different experiences and becoming a more rounded human being as she's figuring stuff out. And that's it. That's the film. But it's a great film. I did not expect. This is probably my number 3.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Of the year.
Really good.
Really good. I give this 4 out of 5. And I think that might, again, I think it's one of those ones, if I see it again, it might go upwards. Because it was just a beautiful, moving, totally engaging film that I wasn't expecting. I get it. But it has many horrific elements. It's a horror film through and through, but it's also an art house film in a good way. So that's it. Yeah,
I feel like
so that's the 52.
That's crazy that you covered that many, man. I think we may have to cover You Won't Be Alone at some point as well.
Yes, but it was really terrific.
Man, I again, Mark, I admire your dedication. Just unbelievable.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you for watching all these. So
that's all right,
man. So should we do feedback for this, or do we want to save it for next time? Okay.
No, let's do feedback now because it's about this episode. So I did post today that we were going to be doing this. I should have posted earlier. I wasn't thinking ahead.
Well, me too.
We were doing this and asking if anyone wanted to give us any feedback, and we did get some. Mark Ord was the first replier.
Yeah, he
said,
us a list.
And we're not going to have many replies because I only posted it a few hours ago, so you know.
Yeah.
And he said 2022 was an absolute banger of a year for horror movie. Agreed. It was a really high quality year. Mm-hmm. And he mentions X, Prey, The Sadness. Now, The Sadness was, when I looked it up, was 2021, so I didn't watch that. The Menu, he mentions, great menu. Black Phone, Orphan First Killed, The Cursed. Again, I looked that up. It says 2021, so I didn't watch it.
Right.
I did try and check everything. And Men. He mentioned Men. The one with Rory Kinnear, with the woman, and it with the folk horror vibe.
Very cool.
And so much more. Even Marvel Studios came up with hugely entertaining Werewolf by Night. Yeah, Werewolf by Night was great. A great little TV thing. Other good TV things this year were What We Do in the Shadows Season 4. And I quite like Wednesday, the Addams Family Wednesday as well.
Yeah, another thing I want to check out. I know it's kind of a teen coming of age thing, but I'm still like, I love the Addams Family. So
yeah. He also then says, funny enough, the most hyped films like Smile, Barbarian and Terrifier 2 were the most disappointing for me. So fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough. My personal favourite horror movie of 2022 was Speak No Evil, the one I talked about with the Danish and the Dutch couples.
Indeed.
Yeah, and I replied, Speak No Evil really got under my skin. It did. It was probably the most affecting for me personally of all these films, actually. I really got annoyed. Those Soft and Quiet really annoyed me as well, the one with the lady racists.
Yeah.
And then he replied back to me saying, Speak No Evil was really amazing. They're doing an American remake with James McAvoy. which annoys me. Most remakes are inferior to the original. Yeah, I read they were remaking it with James McAvoy. For some reason, I just instantly went to, it's going to be a British version, because I felt like the politeness that was intrinsic to the plot felt very English to me. So I thought this would totally work as an English film as well.
I agree with that. I think it would work better even if it's an American film, if they use British actors,
as the polite.
Exactly, because I find, and I'm just being totally honest here, I find British people to be a lot nicer than most Americans.
American people are nice. In my experience, American people are very nice. Well, I went to Vegas and everyone was very nice to me. I'm
glad you had a good experience here.
And then I posted about how good a year it was, really, overall. And Kevin Matthews then replied. He says, "A great year. Nope may not be pure horror, but it was my favourite year." I think we need to cover Nope as well.
I think so too. I think
at some point.
That might be my favourite of the year too. It's so hard to pick one.
Yeah. He says, Skinamarink was my least favourite, rated so low that it didn't even break into this selection. Other standouts included Pearl and X, of course, although we don't get Pearl until a couple of months ago. Yep. Deadstream, he mentions, Candyland, and the knowing sass of Bodies, Bodies, Bodies. Although arguably much more of a comedy than a horror. So he mentioned all the ones we've talked about.
Very cool.
It sounds like we're on the same wavelength again there. Skinamarink. There were like 4 or 5 weak ones for me. Some I may have underrated, some I may have overrated, but I'm pretty happy that Pearl is the best film of the year. Pray for Me comes second.
Oh, yeah.
And You Won't Be Alone, I can't stress this enough, is my number 3 here. I think it's a terrific film, and I've got a feeling hardly anyone's seen it.
Yeah, it is really, as much as I like Nope, which I think is spectacular, I do think Pearl is probably, for me, the best film as well. It's 2022.
Yeah, but you put Nope number 2, would you? Do you think, or Prey?
I think I'd put Nope at number 2 and Prey at number 3.
Fair enough. Yeah. Fair enough. I feel even more strongly I need to rewatch Nope.
Well, again, everybody has a different perspective. Man, I wouldn't mind rewatching it again for sure. So stay tuned for that. I'm sure we'll be covering that.
Yeah.
So
what we got? We want to do Nope. We want to do Pearl and X probably, and we want to do Violent Night when it gets to next Christmas.
Yep. And maybe You Won't Be Alone as well, right?
Yeah, maybe You Won't Be Alone too.
Yeah. So lots of good stuff to cover, and I mean, lots of new horror coming out all the time. So much that I can't keep up with the new stuff.
And we are intending to do shows much more freely again. It's just watching all these films took a lot of time. But I really felt I wanted to try and cover them to give people sort of overview of the whole year. And I've really enjoyed it. It wasn't a chore. I really enjoyed it. It was just making time was the issue.
Yeah, making time was the kind of the issue for me too, as well as 2022 all in all, just kind of a rough year. So I didn't, I haven't watched as much horror. Not that I don't still love horror. I absolutely, horror is my favorite genre. And we will continue to cover it definitely in the future here. So we're not pod fading.
So we're just, about 2 hours 50, I think.
Yeah.
That's probably, I think we've done one episode longer than this. But there was like 5 of us on that episode. I do remember, I think we got one episode way back where we did a longer one. But this is a pretty long one. Yeah, but it's been fun, right?
This makes up for, the not having other episodes. This is like a mega special episode.
Yeah, this is a mega special. You can stop and start it fairly easily and not lose track because it's alphabetized, right?
Exactly.
So, there you go.
Yeah, and I'll all the films too on the website. With the notes. So shall we close here, Mark?
Let's close here. Go lie down in a cold room somewhere.
Yeah, man. Again, thank you, Mark. Man, tremendous job. But man, 2022, what a great year for horror. And again, I think it's this year, 2023, that we're in is already a great year for horror as well. I mean, the new Scream film just came out, so there's a lot to cover. from 2023 as well. Renfield is out, which I'm sure we'll probably cover.
Yeah, I'd like to cover Renfield soon.
I would too. Yeah. Maybe that'll be our next one. We'll talk about it, and we'll see what you guys want to hear as well. So thank you also for the feedback, everyone. We greatly appreciate it. Well, that about wraps it up for this episode. Thank you all for listening. Please check us out online at www.unhpodcast.com. You can listen to us online wherever great podcasts are found. We also have a video version of the show on YouTube. That address is now youtube.com/@ like the email symbol, United Nations of Horror. Make sure you check out Mark's podcast, which we mentioned earlier, The Good, the Bad, and the Odd. That is at www.thegoodthebadandtheodd.com. If you want to come hang out with us, we'd love to talk with you. Come on out. We're a small group. We're very welcoming. Check us out on the Facebook groups. I know a lot of people are like, Facebook is for old people, but I still think Facebook is probably
totally works.
I mean, it allows you to write a lot more than you would in other places. So check us out there, facebook.com/groups/UN of Horror. Until next time, bye from me.
And bye from me.
And we'll see you right back here next time on the United Nations of Horror.